afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March DRC meeting. The DRC is a subcommittee of the Historic Zoning Commission. This meeting is designed to be informal and guide applicants through the process of obtaining a certificate of appropriateness for projects within the city's historic districts in light of the historic district design guidelines. Applicant participation in DRC meetings is voluntary but highly recommended. Any changes made or suggestions taken by the applicant based on discussions with the DRC are the applicant's choice, but the DRC makes no representation as to whether any changes or suggestions made during this meeting will be approved by the voting body, the Historic Zoning Commission. Tonight we have 10 items on the agenda. The items called, please introduce yourself and generally describe your item in about 2 to 3 minutes. Let's get started with item number 1. That is discussion of roof replacement and alterations at 231 Miles Manor Court, also known as Jasmine Grove. Amanda McCreary.
Hello, all. How are you?
Good.
Amanda McCreary, Chisel Workshop. As you know, we've been to you all over the last couple of years working on the Miles Manor project. As part of this project, we are looking to replace the roof on the existing house. The existing roof has some areas of deterioration that have been replaced, but it's time for it to be completely replaced. The underlayment underneath the roof is also, it needs to be replaced as well. Some of the fascia boards, not the fascia boards, sorry. It's been a long day. The substrate underneath. As far as we know, a lot of the substrate was replaced in 1981 when they did the big renovation anyway. So that red roof was put on in 81. And we're looking to put back a metal roof at this point. So not looking to change material, but are looking to change the color. And we are looking to do a dark bronze color. The existing gutters on the house are a little bit of a mismatch. Some of them are square profile 1981 gutters. That tends to be a little bit more on the back. The ones in the front are round gutters. They are copper. Some of them that have been repaired in kind are still copper. Some of the copper ones got painted. We are keeping the Queen Anne gutter system. We just need to fix it to get it to drain properly, but we are keeping the Queen Anne on the front. We're doing Queen Anne on the back on some of the additions that we've already approved anyway. So here we are looking to do new metal roof and dark bronze and replace all of the gutters with copper round gutters, downspouts, all the downspouts with copper round downspouts.
Okay. Thank you. Elizabeth, did you have some comments for us?
Thank you. So as mentioned, the existing gutters are a combination of round and square. The round gutters are copper, but some have been painted white and have a combination of that OGK style where additions have been made. And on the recently approved additions, those are all approved to be round gutters as well. I don't believe the finish was indicated on those applications. The existing roof is a standing seam metal roof in a red finish, and it's proposed to replace in material, but to change the color of the finish to a dark bronze finish. The NR listing does not mention the original roofing material or color at the time of the listing, and it's difficult to discern from older images what exactly the roof material was before the standing seam metal. So as proposed, that would be appropriate. And with the dark bronze finish. More information is needed to understand the historic gutters on the building to potentially see if those could be preserved, as the guidelines would recommend to preserve and maintain historic gutters and downspouts and to repair and replace damaged gutters and downspouts. The proposed style and finish are appropriate to the neoclassical style of the building. So we would just need more information to make sure that any historic gutters are preserved on the building.
Okay.
Otherwise, it is appropriate. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
And it's our understanding that none of them are historic, that the round ones in the front were put on in the 80s when they were doing the roof, and then the ones in the back are the square and modern style.
Okay. Okay. Bob, do you want to kick us off with any thoughts you have on this?
I think what you have presented to us sounds consistent with what the guidelines ask for.
Thank you.
Brian?
Same here. I just want to ask a question on the porch where it makes that radius. Do the Queen Anne gutters also make that radius there?
I believe they do. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, it looks good
Yep.
to me. Thank you.
Holly, any thoughts?
I think that this looks just fine.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. I think this makes sense for what you're trying to do. I think the chimney's kind of got a, is that copper, that cap, or is it?
I
sort
think
of
it's copper
bronze?
that's oxidized.
Okay. Yeah. And I see some downspouts are kind of copper now. I think, I know the guidelines recommend keeping, like they would recommend keeping the existing half-round gutters and unpaint them, whatever that means.
Well, in
But
the
it seems an in-kind replacement to me is like,
yeah,
yeah, it's all the same.
and they're the
appropriate.
ones that are white. They are copper. It's just somebody previously painted them.
Yeah, okay. That sounds good to me. So, any other specific questions you have? for
Nope. I just
us?
want to make sure we're good.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
See you guys later.
Thank you so much. Hopefully they're all this easy. Number 2. All right, this is discussion of in-kind replacement, roof replacement, new ramp, and alterations at 135 4th Avenue South, the Dan German Hospital. Is it pronounced German? Okay. I almost said Germain, and I was like, it doesn't have an I. So, Ben McCreary, start us off, please.
Perfect.
Thanks.
I'll start with the hard part first. Let's talk about the ramp. So, the first image you see there is, so this building is going to be used as a public space. It's owned by the county. So they're going to use it as kind of potentially some sort of a public outreach place, an art gallery or something. We're not sure yet, but we know it's going to be public facing. It's not going to be it's not going to be, it's going to be something that needs to be accessed by ADA, essentially. So, what we need is we need a ramp. There's currently no access to the building other than there's an 18-inch basically grade differential between the front porch or any of the side doors and the grade. So what we're proposing is a small ramp over here on the left side of the porch. And what we like about this location, one, is that most of the ramp is actually hidden behind a wall. There's kind of a wing wall that you can see that comes off the edge of the front porch, the stone portion and everything like that. So most of the ramp is beside that. So what we want to do is just create an access from the existing sidewalk, kind of straight in, and then it will make a U back and then kind of ramp up into the porch. And all that will be, again, hidden behind the stone portico elements of the front porch already. It's only 18 inches, right? So really the highest portion of the ramp, like that platform you'll see in the back, will only be 9 inches above grade. And so we'd like to have a very simple handrail. It doesn't need to be a guard. So we're thinking just a single, top handrail and then potentially a small little 4-inch high, another rail at the bottom. So something that's really not a lot of pickets, probably be, be metal is what we're thinking for that.
Okay. How about the any of the roofing or any of that other stuff that's in here? Do you want to walk us through?
Sure. Yeah, so-
what's happening where?
Right. So the entire, well, I would say it's probably 80% of the roof is being replaced. There was a section on the back that had been replaced previously. I'm not sure when that happened, but it had gone through historic and things like that. It's been recent enough to be a modern material. And you can see that in these photos here. It's the green thing. And so great. So this is samples. So, right. This was the original trim that was on the roof and the gable or the dormers. That is no longer available. We cannot find it anywhere, and it is all deteriorated. This is the newer profile that's already been put on the building. It's very similar, and this, we can still get this and find it. It's available in this color. It's not available in white, which would be the trim color, but it is available in the roof color. So what we're proposing is replacing all the rest of the roof with this material, because the rest of all the tin that's up there is like this or worse, deteriorated. And so replacing it with this, and then we'll be using all the same trim profiles that are there. Those are still there, the ones you see on top of the ridge and at the peaks of the gable and things like that. All of that will be just replaced in kind with new. And then the wood trim has been replaced in certain areas as well on the backside. It had been replaced previously, so really we're going to be replacing in kind with the current places that are already deteriorated. As you can see on the front, there's big gaping holes of trim coming off and things like that. So it will be a wood profile that is the same as what's there historically. So that's really what it is. It's mostly replacing in kind with what we can get nowadays that is similar to what was there.
Okay.
The one question that we do have is that on the front dormer, there's a small little dormer, and it has a triangular piece on the side that is currently this older metal that's deteriorating. There are locations like in the front gables and things like that where there is horizontal lap siding that has been put in the tops of the gables. We're asking if it's possible to replace the metal on the sides of the dormers with a lap siding kind of painted, really, because right now we're going to have to be painting this metal, and we're concerned about, wood holds paint a lot better than this metal will potentially hold paint over time. So we'd like to not put the metal there. We'd like to put just on the sides of the dormer in the front, just lap siding that matches what you can see in the front gable.
Okay. Thank you. And Emily, you have some comments.
I do. So the National Register lists the building as the original S.S. and Betty house dwelling. The circa 1890 1.5-story stone gabled L dwelling was purchased in 1937 by Dr. Dan German, who converted the house into a medical clinic. The house has a gable roof of metal shingles with metal cresting of a star cutout design on the roof ridges and the metal finials at the gable peaks. The gable has decorative verge board and extended triangular section. At the roof line is a gable dormer with decorative wood extended triangular section and patterned wood shingles. A circa 1960 wing additions have been removed since a 1999 survey. As been mentioned, it's proposed to replace parts of the roof in kind, deteriorated wood elements in kind, and install a ramp on the side of the building. The guidelines recommend preserving historic roof forms and materials. If damage occurs, replace the damaged materials only. Maintain and preserve historic wood siding, shingles, and weatherboard, board and batten, and other historic wooden elements. Paint, repair, and provide other regularly needed maintenance. Should historic exterior wood siding require repair or replacement, the resulting materials, profiles and designs should match the historic configuration. Maintain painted surfaces of historically painted buildings or features. Construct ramps of concrete or wood. Paint ramps in colors compatible with the building. Use simple designs for ramps. If utilized, use a reversible design that offers minimal impact and does not involve the removal of historic features. Screen ramps and lifts through plantings to minimize their visual impact. And if possible, position ramps and lifts on the rear or side facades where not readily visible. As proposed, the in-kind replacement of the roof, wood elements in the installation of the ramp are appropriate. While the details of the ramp have not been provided, it would be appropriate to utilize a concrete ramp with simple railings, as Ben mentioned that they would do.
Okay. Thank you. Holly, do you want to go first this time?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so the ramp, I think, is necessary and seems like you put it in a place that's minimally invasive, so I think that's perfect. The siding on the side of the dormer, I feel like that's an okay substitution rather than trying to paint that roofing material. The roofing material looks like a really great replacement. My only question was about the detail on the ridge. Are you guys able to keep that, or what was the deal? What was that?
We are replacing it with the exact product. We can find that exact same thing.
Okay, great.
now, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it looks really good. Okay.
Okay. Let's go to Brian. You're always second.
So the roof ridge, the decorative elbow, is it really damaged like you're showing the shingle, the metal shingle that's deteriorated? Can it not be reused?
Possibly. We can definitely look into that and see what's salvageable. But if there's pieces that, I guess we're kind of just hedging our bets here. If there's pieces that we find that can't be salvaged, is the commission open to us using a comparable, exactly, well, it's the same profile. So a similar, same look.
Place in kind. Yeah, I would say that I would be open to that. But I would say if you can salvage original material, I would say do it, if it's possible. The other thing is on the dormer, on the sides of the dormer. You know, since that was what was originally there, those shingles, I can see why you may not want to go back with the new right now, but I wonder if you could salvage enough of the old material, some of the shingles that are not deteriorated, and replace them with those. And that way you keep some original elements of that were there before. And you can tell that when Dan German, and Dan German had several rental properties through town, and you'll see that a lot of them are this stone veneer. That's this crab orchard stone that's on this one too. So this building's been greatly changed from what it looked like in the 1890s. So with that said, I want to go back to the ramp. So you're saying that on the ramp that it's only about 18 inches, that's its height at its max.
Right, where it meets the existing porch, it's at 18 inches.
And I would say because the porch is concrete and the way you have that wing wall that kind of hides it, I think that concrete is an appropriate material in this location. And the simple handrail is good as well. But I wanted to ask a couple other things. One is I thought I was by there this last Tuesday, and it looked like there may have been hardy board trim being installed. But you said you're going to go back with wood trim.
I will have to double check on that. I think that is the intent for the actual, at least the profiles, the OG and the kind of CYMA. That part I know will be wood. You're talking about the flat pieces, is that
The
what you're
fascia
seeing?
boards on the flat pieces, they look like hardy board to me.
Okay,
So I just want to bring that to your attention.
all right,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Bob?
I agree with my colleagues, and as far as the sides of the gables, I think wood's a good thing to use if you can't salvage enough, and like Brian said,
Okay.
and paint it to where the paint will stay on. So.
Okay. Yeah, I like the idea of maybe trying to salvage enough to do those little triangles. I'm looking at the pictures here, and there's like some scallop shake in that dormer in the front gable, and then you've got the large front-facing gable, has siding. Was any of that demoed, that siding in that
The large
main?
front-facing one?
Yeah. I was
I-
wondering if there's anything in behind it to tell us what.
I don't think that's been demoed, no.
Okay. Just curious, because you've got a mix and match. We've got some sort of metal areas, some scallop shake or whatever that is,
Right.
siding. Then there's these. The side gable has stone that goes all the way up. The front could behind there, who knows? But I'd love to see you use some of that metal roofing on the sides, just because it is unique,
Sure.
and that's what is charming about the house, is it has some peculiarities. And if we get rid of all those for something more typical, then it becomes less peculiar, I think, which is not necessarily a good thing. So try that, and then, like I said, if it ends up siding or scalloped, it doesn't break my heart, but I'd love to see the oddity of the metal siding on it, which isn't that odd. We've seen that, but
Yeah.
anything else?
Yeah, just one more thing, just because, this building was going to be demolished, and a local citizen advocated that it not, and she led the effort to save the Dan German building, and Bev Roberts died last year. So I just want to give her a good word that what citizens can do when they put their mind to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
Perfect. Anything else specifically you want to ask?
That is all. That's all the
Okay.
requests I have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3, discussion of repair and in-kind replacement of exterior elements at 305 Main Street. This is the Williamson County Courthouse, and we have Jenna Lee. Okay. brought his tape measure. What's your name, sir?
My name is David Crowthall.
Okay.
I work with Lee Restoration. I worked on this with, we were hired by Lamb and Associates through the county to do the repair in kind at the courthouse. I believe everything that we have on our documents that we submitted is basically, there's 14 different trim profiles that we have to match and repair in kind. We have approximately 100 linear feet of trim that needs to be removed because it's damaged beyond repair. And then the Queen Anne gutters were all to the point where they were deteriorated and needed to be redone. And then the last step is to paint the same colors. We did notice, as we were doing the Queen Anne gutters, as I'm looking at the front of the courthouse, that there is an issue with there is an issue below that clock tower, right where the clock is. There's considerable damage underneath of that, so we'll have to repair that siding as well. We just had that done, I believe, Friday. We had that Queen Anne repaired.
Okay. Let's see. Emily, have you got some comments on this too?
I do. So the National Register defines this building as the 1858 Williamson County Courthouse, and it served as headquarters for the Federal Army during the Civil War and functioned as a hospital during the Battle of Franklin. The interior was remodeled in 1937, 1964, and 1976. The annex was constructed in 1976. The courthouse is a two-story brick Greek Revival-style building with a stone foundation and a gable metal roof. On the main facade is a two-story portico with fluted columns with plain capitals. The portico has a second-story balcony with a cast-iron railing. In the center of the portico's pediment is a clock. Dental molding is in the pediment and at the cornice. As mentioned, the following work is proposed: replacement of the existing horizontal gable metal roof returns at both east and west gables of the courthouse and annex buildings, restoration of the existing built-in style gutters at both north and south sides of the courthouse and annex buildings at the horizontal cornices, surface preparation and painting of the existing cornices, cornice rakes, fascias, soffits, dental molding at the perimeter of both buildings, and then gable, and then the clock gable. The surface preparation includes the possible replacement of wood components where it is so damaged, and the exterior, and is going to be sealed with exterior sealant. And additionally, installation and painting of replacement materials. The materials will match the removed damaged materials of the wood species and trim profile. As proposed, the work that is proposed is all in-kind work and is appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let's start with Brian this time.
Well, thank you, David. So you said 100 feet of trim to be replaced, and you're matching all those original profiles?
Correct, yes. We had to get knives cut for those and get, the appropriate wood sizes as well, because some of them are over 3 inches thick.
Are there sections you're just repairing? I mean, like you do with liquid wood or some epoxies?
Exactly, yes. There are areas where we will be repairing the wood, so.
Anything being done to the turn metal?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bob?
Well, like I was looking at one of the photos and it looked like the paint had bubbled up. Are y'all just doing a scraping on that once you determine it doesn't need to be replaced?
Yeah, we did a determination of that over the course of the last 2 weeks. We had our guys up on the lift checking to see if it was damaged beyond repair, and then we took measurements of everything. So yeah, everything that had bubbled up, but it still is repairable, will be done with like an epoxy wood putty.
Holly? Okay, good. Yeah, I think this is, everything you mentioned sounds good, and it's all sounds like a winner. So I don't really have any more comment than what everybody's said. But I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah, it's going to look beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. Snooze. Okay. Next up, item number 4, discussion of alterations of rear dormer at 234 4th Avenue North, and this is Brandon Pretty.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. This is the property at 234 4th Avenue, across from our office, if anybody knows where that is, near where the cemetery is. And what the owner would like to do here is he just wants to open up the structure inside a little bit and bring in some daylight. As part of that, was looking to add a dormer, a simple shed dormer on the back, felt like the most appropriate way to do that. We have some images to establish there's precedent for this in the general area. And in addition, it's not visible from either 4th Avenue or North Margin running in the other direction. So feels pretty straightforward within the guidelines.
Okay,
That's what we're proposing.
perfect. Thank you. Elizabeth.
So we'd like to thank the applicant for bringing this to the DRC. A rear dormer is proposed on the building located at 234 4th Avenue North. The rear dormer addition will not be visible from street view and will be sized and located in an appropriate way at the rear of the building. Additional information will be needed to be included in the application for a COA to ensure the slope of the dormer roof is appropriate and to ensure the dormer is recessed at least 1 foot from the exterior building wall. As it appears today, it does appear to align with the guidelines and is appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trying to think of who to pick on first this time. Back to Holly.
So the windows, I would imagine you're using wood windows that are nice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then just one thing, I'm not entirely sure what the proportions, what's exactly different, but you have a picture on the first page that on the top right and the one right below it. Yeah, the one right below that on the right. That one looks proportioned a little bit better. I think it may be just the angle. So I know that there's probably a ceiling height you're trying to get in there, and it sounds like staff thinks that it's fine. So I think the other one looks better, but because it's on the back, I don't know if that mattered. What do you think, architect?
Well, I think that's one of staff's comments was that we don't really know the roof pitch. Looking at the 3D looks a little shallow. The guidelines usually recommend being off of the ridge by a certain amount. What is it, 6 inches or something below?
I don't believe it's defined, the measurement off the ridge of the main roof line. It's just off the ridge.
Off the ridge, yeah. And if you look at all the examples, they're all on the ridge. But I think it would have a little more presence if it had, yeah. And then it looks like it might stack on the wall below, and the only difference is maybe the stone veneer. So if it steps back a little and then pitches up the roof, it might have a proportion that looks like the inspiration image is a little more. But anything else, Holly?
Nope, that's it.
It's good. Okay. Bob?
I was just looking at the photo of the back of the house, and it versus the drawing of the house, it just seemed like the roof line was a little different. It just looked a little different. I think the dormer looks fine. I was just a little concerned. It almost looks like on the photograph that if you build the dormer, you could possibly see it from the side of the house if you're driving down.
Is that the bottom left image?
Yes. Just going by the drawing of the dormer above the door. And it may not be visible. It just kind of looked different than the drawing of the roof line.
Is there an empty lot to the
Yes.
west.
Yeah, you're looking across an empty lot.
So it's not a corner lot, but there's nothing at the corner now.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
I
And
guess
then-
to your point, the side of that, is that what you're saying? Like
Yes.
where that, yeah. Yeah, that, there may be a little piece of that visible. I
Okay,
mean, I think we tried to keep it down, but if we increase the slope, it may peak up above that a little bit.
okay, all right, thank you.
And I'm not sure there'll ever be anything on that lot. Is it floodplain? It is.
Yeah, I'm sure it's in the
so
floodplain.
it's could have something, but it's not
It's-
very straightforward.
Yeah, we looked at it previously. It's a tough lot. I'll just say
yeah,
that.
yeah. It's small too.
Yeah.
So yeah, to your point, Bob, you may see a little piece of that if you pitch it up higher, but again, that's not out of the ordinary for the neighborhood. Lots of them houses have rear dormers. Brian, did you have some thoughts?
I think the comments I've heard are already appropriate to the guidelines. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is I'm looking at the pictures of the windows and things on the 3D. It seems that that square window that the dormer windows are based off of looks like a double hung in the picture. And the dormers in the whole rendering looks like it's casements. I don't mind mixing them up, but that's not what the guidelines say. They say to try and use double hungs. But what I was going to say is you've also got this little bit longer window, and as that dormer maybe grows a little and scoots back, you may have more height. And if you end up with a whole bunch of head on that dormer above the window and it's just a bunch of wall, you might as well put glass in it. I wouldn't want a small window in a tall dormer.
Yeah.
So
No.
I was just looking at the proportions there, and that can make a difference on whether it looks right or not.
No, I think it's good. I don't think you want to see any of that siding. You just want to have the trim right above
Well,
it.
the lumber companies want us to put like 2x20s as headers now over windows. So
What do they know?
it's a hard thing. So
Yeah.
anything else from anybody? Any specific? I think we're good.
Awesome.
If you're
Thank you
good,
all
we're
very much.
good. Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Brandon.
See you in a bit.
Item number 5. Discussion of in-kind repair, alterations, and new front yard fencing at 936 Fair Street, and I have Lisa Garcia as the applicant. Good afternoon.
Hi, good
Hi there.
afternoon. How are you all?
Good.
So, we are proposing to do a few things to 936 Fair Street. The first item on our list is to change the paint colors. That would be including the roof and the entire exterior and trim colors. And these are the proposed colors. So the main body of the house would be the cream color, and the trim would be the evergreen fog green color. And then we are doing, well, this house has 4 different colors on it, so it's still in the works as far as exactly what colors are going to be on some of the areas, but the main part of the house would be the cream, and then the trim colors would be the green. And then the roof currently is a metal roof, but it is painted. So we do not want to replace the roof, but we are proposing to basically have it power washed and then repainted. So that's our first.
What
item.
color's the roof going to be?
It's going to be the urban bronze.
Urbane, okay. Okay. And then there's a note here for fencing too.
And then the fencing is, we are going to replace exactly what's there currently. I mean, I don't know how old this fence is. I'm not really, I don't really know, but it's in pretty bad shape. So we were going to replace it with it would look exactly the same. Nothing would be, we're not going to make it any bigger, any smaller. It'd just be exactly how it is now, but new material. Cedar, same height, same everything. Pickets, the same posts with the same detail on the post. So that's for the front, and that's in the front of the house. That's a picket fence in the front. And then on either side of the property, there's a metal fence that's the chain link fence that we would like to take the chain link fence out and then put in a wood fence, 8-foot high wood fence that's the same on the left side of the house. There's already a wood fence that's separating the neighbor's house from our house. So proposing to do the same style wood fence on the right side of the property where the chain link fence is.
Okay. Anything else we should look at and talk about?
Nope.
Okay. And I know staff will have some notes they may remember more than I do. Emily?
Yes. So the building at 936 Fair Street is considered contributing to the Hinchville National Register District. It was constructed in 1893, and it is a Queen Anne styled house. So the series of work that is proposed, as it was mentioned, to repaint the color on the exterior and trim of the house, including the metal roof that is currently painting, in-kind replacement of the front yard fencing, removal of the chain link fencing, rehabilitation of the windows into working order, restacking the chimney, and installing gas lanterns on the house and in the courtyard. The guidelines recommend preserving historic roof forms and materials, maintaining and preserving historic wood siding, painting, repairing, and providing other regularly scheduled maintenance, maintain painted surfaces of historically painted buildings or features, use paint colors and schemes typical of the age and style of the building, preserve and maintain the design of historic fences, walls, retaining walls, and gates, preserve and maintain historic windows and historic window openings. If new lights are needed, use simple fixtures that are appropriate to the scale and period of the house and constructed of historically prevalent materials. New fixtures should be placed in traditional locations. Staff appreciates the applicant coming to a DRC meeting to discuss the proposals to the house. Repainting the wood elements on the house to a new colorway is supported by the guidelines. And I did want to provide a photo. We found a photo from the 1995 National Register Properties in Williamson County book. The book shows the building to be painted white, which supports the proposed colorway. So, you flip back.
That looks exactly like it.
The installation of new front yard fencing will all be in kind, replacing what is existing, and will remove the chain link fencing on the sides of the driveway. The restoration of the windows is also supported by the guidelines, and we commend the applicant in restoring them. The utilization of a gas lantern in the front of the building is supported, as gas would have been the way to illuminate the exterior of your house when the house was constructed. However, the installation of a courtyard gas lantern is not supported, as it is not seen within this district. And just a comment for the proposed side yard fencing. The design guidelines recommend side yard and rear yard fencing to not exceed a height of 7 feet.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. We'll start with Brian this time, if you're ready, Brian.
Mr. Chair, I'm glad you started with me because Lisa recently remodeled a house next to me, and as of a couple weeks ago, I have wonderful new neighbors. So, and I wondered, I knew you also had this house, and I thought, I wonder when you'll get to work on it. So I now know that.
Now you know.
So
yeah.
that's wonderful. Glad to see you here. As far as the picket fence, I'm kind of under the impression the Stettlemeyers may have may have put that fence up, and I think it might be late 90s, early 2000s. So it probably goes back somewhere along that period, and it is needing a refresh. I did want to bring up the chimney. So when we, I refer
There's
you,
two chimneys, actually, and they're both going this way right now, so.
and it's good to support those. I know the importance of that. But as far as chimney caps, so refer to the guidelines for chimney caps. I've noticed in town, there've been a lot of people who've started installing these that look like gable houses on top of chimneys, and that's not supported in the guidelines. So
Okay.
I just try to remind you of that. Wanted to say too, thank you for realizing the importance of saving those historic windows. And I read something the other day that said that the best window you can buy for your historic home is the one you already have. So that's a good thing you're doing.
Now
And
we
as
just
far-
need to figure out where to get that wavy glass. We've got a couple panels that are cracked and broken, so that'll be my next. It's hard to come by, that wavy glass.
That's what internet searches are good
Yeah.
for these days.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brent.
Holly?
So the picket, it looks like most of this is just in kind except the color. Is that right? Is the, everything you're replacing is just in kind?
Yes.
Right, except for the colors?
Yes,
Right,
correct.
okay. And the colors aren't really our thing that we have any. I like that the colors that are already here highlighted the details and that fish scale, the shingles. Are you planning to like keep the detail?
Yeah, we are. It's just we're trying to figure out exactly what the colors that I've proposed are the ones that we're going to be using. It's just placing them in that area, how we're going to do that. But yes, we're not going to just paint it all one color.
Right, sounds good.
Bob? I'm glad to see work on this house. Colors look fine. I like the picket fence, the way it's not straight across. It kind of meanders, has a little cut, but it's still
Right.
36 inches at the tallest.
Right.
So I'm glad to see all that work done.
Yeah, I like the fence. It just needs to
It needs some
It
TLC.
needs some TLC, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said. I think the paint colors, we don't review exact paint colors, but we do review it. If somebody showed up and wanted Pepto-Bismol pink,
Right.
and we thought it was not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, we do review that. But I think what you're proposing makes a lot of sense, and that picture shows that it was some form of that before. So that's nice. Did you have something?
Yes, so the guidelines, while we do not review the paint colors, the guidelines do recommend using paint colors and schemes typical of the age and style of the building. And so, like this building is, like the wood siding and the metal roof, they have already been painted.
Sure.
So that it is appropriate to paint them.
Right. Yeah. So since it's already been painted before, the roof, paint it. And yeah, if you didn't get to paint the roof, that'd be an interesting combo with a red
Right,
roof
with
and a
the
white
with the
house.
right, it's just, that wouldn't really work too well, so.
Fencing all sounds good. I think they gave you some comments on height. Rehabbing the windows, great. Gas lanterns, we've had some other folks come through hoping to get gas lanterns, and I don't think we approved them, but their house was of a different vintage and a different part of town at that time. So I think based on staff's comments, it would be okay. But we don't see a lot of post-mounted, especially gas, in the neighborhood. I think that's what staff was queuing in on. So the gas on the house itself would be appropriate, but having a post-mounted gas lantern would not be,
Okay.
not supported by the guidelines.
Okay.
And then the chimneys, yeah, if they need to be reworked,
We're gonna
That'd be great.
restore them, and they're gonna reuse the bricks. It is, they're gonna dismantle them all and put the same bricks back up, so.
good.
I'm glad I'm not doing that job.
Yeah, it's tough work. Anything else specifically?
No, I think that's all.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I do have a quick, back to the gas porch lights. where did you propose those going
So.
on the house? Can you point those out, Emily?
2 at the front door, but inside, so on either side of the front door, 2. Then there's a side door that leads into the nook kitchen area, and there's a electric lantern there now on the side of the house, so 1 there. And then on the left side of the house, on the courtyard side, there's a set of French doors that go into the dining area, and that would like to put 1 there, but it's like one that hangs from like the ceiling. So 2 at the front door, 1 on the right side of the house, 1 on the left side, and then the post would be out.
Okay.
Well, I'd recommend when you come back for a voting meeting on it, if you could show exactly, you know, or
Where?
an example where those are going to go.
Sure.
That would be helpful for the commission.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and we like to see the ones you intend to use too. If you
Okay.
got a picture from
Yep.
whoever it comes from, Bevelo, 14th
Yep.
Colony, who's making it, we'd like
Yeah.
to see those. So.
Will do.
Is that good? Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 6, discussion of new construction principal building at 115 Winslow Road. Michael Katsidis. Good afternoon.
Third time is the charm here. Should I proceed? Again, my name is Michael Katsidis, MK Studio, representing my client, Doug Majors. In an effort to tone down to low-key, low-profile, less impact, smaller scale, smaller mass, we're able to redesign basically the first and second floor, mainly the second floor of this house, and created a bungalow, arts and crafts, craftsman, I guess, with some bold tapered columns, 36 by 36 inch pilasters, 24 inch or 20 inch base columns tapering up to 12 or 14 inches. Exposed rafter tails, plumb cut rafter tails throughout. Even the shed roofs over the dormers. On the porch itself, we have flying joist with scrolled tails on that for a little decorative arts and crafts feel. And overall, from the previous design, we were able to reduce it by 3.5 feet in height. So the height now is, hold on just a minute, is 24 feet, and the previous version was 27.7. Now it's 24.5. And of course, by reducing the main house, we're able to reduce the height of the garage. That's 70 feet beyond as well. Eliminated all the wing walls. We're able to, again, shift the house 5 feet away from 119 Winslow. So it's 15 feet from house to house. We went back and shifted the HVAC units on the right side with no use of wing walls, but we will hide those with heavy landscape.
Okay. Elizabeth, do you have some comments for us?
Yes.
Thank
So we
you.
would like to thank the applicant for returning to DRC with the design of the new construction of a building on an infill lot located on Winslow Road. This item was deferred during the February Historic Zoning Commission meeting, and the applicant has significantly altered the design from what was previously submitted. Improvements have further been made to the massing, scale, height, and style to further make this new construction compatible with nearby historic buildings and to not detract from the character of the historic district. The building is appropriately located within the setbacks, and in addition to the setbacks on the right-hand side of the building, a 10-foot setback is shown to further increase compatibility with the rhythm of placement of buildings along the street, with additional separation from the adjacent building. The placement and attachment of the garage is still proposed. The garage is located in a position so it appears as to be a traditional location of a detached garage and has a recessed connector piece. The footprint of the building is less than the recommended 35% maximum. The floor-to-ceiling height is appropriate at 10 feet. The height of the proposed building has been reduced to a total height of 24 feet 5 inches to the top of the main portion of the building, and the height of the top of the garage is unknown but is less than the height of the main building. The maximum allowed height for this block face, with the 10% above average allowance, is 28 feet. We commend the applicant for reducing the height to further make the building compatible with the historic neighborhood. But the roof form at the front of the building has been simplified and is furthermore compatible with the adjacent historic buildings. As the design of the building goes to the rear, the form does become increasingly complex. However, the visibility of this form is reduced in some areas as it is on the rear. Although it is a new construction project, the form with these roof complexities may read as additions over time. For the porch, the applicant has provided the size of columns during this meeting. The materials appear to be a combination of wood and stone. The guidelines do recommend avoiding ornate milled columns, variations of Greek orders, or craftsman-style columns on porches. Additionally, the guidelines recommend that brick or metal may be appropriate as a material if it is appropriate to the architectural style of the building. As proposed, the style and materials of the columns is typical to the craftsman style. However, the size of the columns there is larger than what is recommended by the guidelines as well. The foundation appears to be a combination of an unknown material for the skirt board and drip cap, and also stone below that. More information is needed about the banding detail above the stone foundation material, and stone is a common foundation material in this neighborhood and aligns with the guidelines. The building will be clad in lap siding. The material specifications have not been included in the submittal, but the guidelines would recommend a smooth, cementitious wood siding and to have an exposure to be consistent with what is seen on adjacent historic buildings. And the roof material appears to utilize a combination of metal and an unknown material. Additional information is needed about the specifications for the materials. The details and ornamentation that are proposed are simple and understated and do not compete with or detract from the surrounding historic buildings. The applicant has noted that they are emphasizing the simplicity, craftsmanship, and balance to ensure that the home appears to have always belonged in the neighborhood. A simple entrance and surround are proposed around the front door. The door utilizes a design that is simple and relates to the craftsman style and is compatible with what is seen on adjacent buildings. The window specifications have not been included at this time, but do appear to have a 6/1 light pattern and appear to be double hung and appropriate to the style of the house. The rhythm and spacing appear to be consistent with traditional placement. A surround is proposed around the windows, and the guidelines would recommend that the surround be raised. A shed dormer is proposed on the front of the building and the garage. Additional dormers are proposed along the rear and side elevations. The dormers appear to be appropriately sized and located to maintain 30 inches from the sidewall and 1 foot recess from the exterior wall. The dormers on the garage utilize a recessed dormer style, which is seen on nearby buildings and throughout the historic districts. One chimney is proposed at the rear of the building for a covered porch and is subordinate to chimneys seen in the area, and specifications on the gutter were not indicated at this time. So for feedback points, we would like to discuss the overall changes to the massing, height, and scale proportions, the design of the columns and the materials on the front porch, the compatibility of the building with the surrounding buildings, the placement of the building on the lot in relation to the pattern of development seen in the street, and the details and ornamentation that are proposed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Making note of all those points at the end there. All right. Bob, are you ready to make some comments? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start with you this time.
I will just make this one comment first, that it seems like the massing of the house just went from a Tudor to a arts and crafts a bungalow. So this appears like it will be a rather large bungalow, 53 feet across. My biggest concern is the roof line coming off the back on the second floor. I just feel like that is going to be a very obvious looking, huge addition to what, and everything else you worked on, is in appearance a bungalow. I just feel like that roof line is coming directly off the top of the roof line from what I see. Maybe there are some, maybe it's shorter, but that's my main concern, is that piece coming off the very back, because that's going to be visible from coming off of Franklin Road down Winslow. And I think it possibly could detract from this really nice bungalow look.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. Brian?
Matt, Emily, could you bring up this perspective? It's on page 14. It's the upper right. Yeah. So you can kind of see the second floor, rear porch, rear second floor. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Is that helpful? Okay.
Yes.
Brian, do you have comments?
Well, I would say back to Bob's point, it kind of just kind of stuck out to me too, looking at, this is the right elevation view. So if you want to bring up the, I'm sorry, I guess I'm looking at the left currently, but the right or the left show it. And let's see, what page? I'm not sure. Page 15. And it would be the bottom one. There we go. So is that what you're referring to,
Yes.
Bob? And that's what I wondered too, so the dormer, I can clearly see it's a dormer on the front. What do you call it on the back? I mean, is that a dormer? Is it where the ridge crosses? Is it part of the main ridge line? I mean, how do you view that? Because if it's like a dormer, it should come off the ridge line. And right now it appears to be on the ridge line. And I think that's probably what Bob, I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth, but I feel that's
You're not. That's exactly what I was trying to convey.
And so that was one thing that I saw too and wondered about. I want to ask you on the siding reveal. What is your siding reveal? Do you have that worked out yet?
Probably a 5.5 inch, something short, with a moderate corners, no corner boards.
And I would say on a bungalow, I would look in the neighborhood and just try to see what the siding reveals are in that neighborhood. I know you see a lot of 4.5 on some things that the houses more in the 1950s. You'll see a larger profile, but just I would say stick to the guidelines, and that would be what is in the neighborhood. The next thing on the porch columns, and I was trying to understand what was being said on the porch columns, because what I would not want to see happen, and I see it a lot in new construction, is where porch columns are not proportionate to the scale of the house. And I think that is more important. That's where you're going, is the scale, the porch column to the house. And just what I see with my eye, I mean, that scale looks appropriate to the historic house. And what I would not want to see is those become so small that no longer you just lost that proportion and scale. So what I'm seeing here, it appears to be to meet that specification. And I would say that third time, this is a charming bungalow. I think you're a very talented architect. I mean, this is the third thing that we've seen. Overall, I believe it fits with the guidelines, but there are a few things I want to ask you about too, and that's looking at that left elevation. I see the window, there's a very small window that's right under the large. So we have 3 larger windows and the small one.
I agree with you 100%. That needs to match the size the width of the second floor. Is that what you meant?
It is.
Yeah.
And
that's
and the other is actually on the right side. So if that's the right elevation, if you can scroll to that one, and that was, let's see, page 16 at the bottom. That's it. So I want to ask about the windows that I'm seeing to the left of the fireplace.
That's
Are
in-
those panels?
There are faux panels and they're transoms. That's in the primary bedroom overlooking 119. So the two primary bedrooms for both homes, they're kind of back to back. So creating some privacy in there and providing some natural light and keeping the height of the rest of the windows. As far as the window to the left or towards the front of the house, that is a closet, I think. So we went with a little smaller to provide more linear hanging space.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. I just wanted to ask about that, what that was I was seeing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Holly?
First, I think that this rendition is a much better fit for the neighborhood scale-wise, and I think that you've done a really, really nice job with this. I had a couple comments. One, I agree with Bob and Brian about the sort of dormer, or the back of that, and it sounds like you can kind of work on that. The other thing is the porch. I think the columns are fine scale-wise, but I think the porch is scaled a little bit too small. And if you look at page 10, on the top left, there's a bungalow that has kind of a similar top dormer, but the porch is a lot more substantial. And I think that it would look more historic if it had a more substantial porch size-wise.
Ma'am, we're already encroaching the front setback with our existing porch, and it's allowed per Franklin zoning, but we just didn't want to overextend our porch where on one side would be encroaching so much that it won't be allowed from zoning.
So it can't, is there a reason it can't be wider? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
ma'am, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, my client wanted a larger porch as well. It just we
Okay.
couldn't do
Well, just to clarify, front porches can encroach into a front yard setback up to 6 feet. There is no width maximum
it. Yeah, it's,
of the encroachment.
Yeah, I mean the width. I think it should be wider.
yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
What we're talking about, it's just that if you look at the side plan, if we, and the other thing is that the porch depth as well, now it's classified as a stoop, not as a porch. So that would be the other item.
Okay. Well, if it's allowed.
See, if I can't extend that to the right side because of the setback line, it's going to be encroaching too much to the front.
Okay. Well, very nice job. I think this is really good.
Thank you. Did you have something, Brian? You look like you're queued up to say something.
It was just on the setbacks. I was trying to understand the setbacks.
Okay.
We may need to look at this further and have a follow-up conversation with the applicant, but the porch, it could be a stoop, it could be a porch, it could be wider, just not deeper.
Yeah, but the guidelines or the zoning regulations is if it is a porch, then we got to be 8 feet in depth for a porch and not a stoop. Is that correct?
Let us follow up on that.
We
I
would
don't want to
rather
give the
see a
wrong
big
number.
porch.
Yeah.
My
Sure.
client would like to see a big porch. So, yeah, if I can get some feedback.
Yeah, well, look, they'll get back with you on what those requirements are. I have been looking closely at the elevations, and something I've told everybody is, man, I'd love to see a scale figure on all these, and you were kind enough to put one in the front elevation, which was really helpful. Mine's buffering a little, otherwise I'd tell you what page I'm looking at, but page 15, the front elevation has kind of the silhouette of a scale figure. So, I mean, I was going to draw attention to the idea that it's a tall house. Not overall height, but that first floor is pretty generous. And how big is that front door?
It's a 9-foot tall door.
Okay.
The ceilings are 10 feet.
Okay.
And a typical bungalow craftsman will probably be 8-foot ceilings with a 6'8" or 7-foot door.
Well, I've seen quite a few bungalows that have taller ceilings, and what I haven't seen is usually a door that big. I've seen some wider doors, but not really that tall. I've seen some 8s, seen some 7s with a transom, a Craftsman, but the idea of the center door and side lights that's money. That's good. And what I was trying to do in my mind was kind of rationalize, okay, the porch and the columns all seem in proportion to the building, like Brian said, but I think the building is kind of a husky version of a Craftsman across the front, which is fine. When you look at some of your inspiration pictures and even some other Craftsman homes, it might be that it needs pairs or trios of columns, and they are smaller, but there's more of them. And if it broadens out a little bit, say the porch gets, 2 or 3 feet wider overall, that's a foot or 18 inches on each side, and it goes to pairs of columns, it would, one, kind of reinforce the Craftsman style, and it might give it a little more delicacy that, is that right? Delicacy? Is that the right word? It's been a long Monday. Because the front of the house, as opposed to your previous versions, isn't super ornamented, which is, we asked for that. But I think the front porch, if it had pairs of columns or something, could pretty quickly, for that style. And our guidelines don't recommend pairs, but if it's indicative of the style, then we've definitely been open to looking at that. But I think it could help the scale if the front door wasn't that tall. Even if it was just an 8, it all of a sudden makes the porch have a different height proportion because there's some space above it.
Yeah, we'd try with 8 and see what happens is then from the top of the windows, then the windows would have to align with the 8-foot tall door.
Yeah, I've been in probably 500 old houses, and the windows and doors don't always align.
It's nice to
Yeah,
have
it's
that
nice.
alignment.
It's nice, but they usually don't.
And then when we drop that door and those windows to 8 feet, then we have a forehead situation between the top of the window
Right.
and the eave.
Right.
And we have that
And I like
extra
that.
space.
I like the high window heads. I think, and I'm not opposed to, having that mass that you have for the front door, but maybe it needs to be broken down into a 7-foot slab and a transom or
Sure,
something.
we can
as
do
long
that.
as you can show that it's indicative of that style, which I can think of examples in Franklin that have that, and Nashville, and countless books. So I think it would help the porch column situation. Like I said, it's in proportion with itself, but as soon as you set the scale figure in there, if that scale figure was, his head was somewhere near the glass, you'd go, oh, this has 9-foot ceilings and a 7-foot door, and it's all in proportion with itself. And when I look at the very bottom sheet with all the side-by-sides, which I love, the phase 1, 2, 3, it fits a lot better, but you can tell the front entry is much more heavy than even the new house on the right, and definitely more than 111 in terms of just how grand that front door and the side lights and all that is. So if it could be that scaled down and the porch may be broad, like Holly said, maybe that gets you something that
Let's
feels
work
better.
on the width of the porch, and if it's allowed,
Yeah.
we can
That'll help.
do a 3/4 or.
Yeah. I like the way it steps up in that particular view. If you look at 111, it steps up just gradually to your proposed design and then steps up gradually again to the next house. And so I think it's a good transition, whereas before it seemed like almost a match or close to it to 119. So I liked that. columns, compatibility. The back, I think what we typically see on the back of these type of historic houses is a dormer of some sort. And what the hip roof being that broad and that deep is making it really feel like a two-story house behind a 1.5-story bungalow.
It is. We're
Yeah.
trying
you're
to
fighting for
hide it
volume.
behind the ridge.
Yeah.
We needed that space. We needed that extra bedroom upstairs, that extra bathroom for the program to fit. And that was the only way to hide it, the roof line behind the main ridge line.
And I don't know what the solution is, but it does look like a big two-story mass behind the, let's say if that were the original house. Of course, it's all new, but is there another way to do it with a second kind of parallel running ridge? There might be some roof work that could simplify a lot of these kind of one-story appendages on the side too, because there's a lot of hip roof kind of tying back and around. So look at that. I understand the necessity for it. Maybe there's a way to do it different, or maybe there's a rear-facing gable that is wider but doesn't come up over the front gable. Maybe that's the ticket, and it's
A
carved
double
into
gable
that.
on the sides.
It could be, or maybe there's a gable on the back where
That
this
won't-
hip
that-
is.
That won't work.
It's tight.
Yeah.
So this just seems like for what the neighbors are almost all, story and a half. That seems like a full-on two-story mass in the back. So whatever you can do to
But
kind of
again,
minimize
it is the back of the house. So.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sympathetic to that. It's just that we can see it. We've seen your 3Ds. I don't think it's unappealing. I just think if there's ways to minimize that and do something with the roof and massing that can play that
We would
massing down, that would
definitely
be
study
helpful. Yeah. Thank you for reducing the height overall. And I think this is much more appropriate for the neighborhood. Not that a Tudor wasn't, but I know you were trying to fit a lot in this house. So the previous versions seemed very massive, even though I thought the styling was beautiful. I think this massing just will fit better. So, any other specific questions or comments from you all?
Just one quick comment, and this has to do with the side-by-side comparisons from 111 Winslow, 115, and 119. What you see is, the width of the main body of the house at 111 is 56 feet. The one that's being proposed is 53 feet. I know you've got the garage that's showing, but you had a little garage on the other too. And then the one at 119 is 51 feet. So, it's kind of within that range of scale for the houses that are near it. So I know we say it's a larger house, but it's a very wide lot.
That's right.
And it seems to fit with the houses that are to each side of it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon. Okay. Okay. Item number 7, just around the corner here. Discussion of new construction principal building at 246 Miles Manor Court. Jeff Castor. How you doing?
Hey, I'm Andrew King. Jeff Castor is the one who submitted it for me. So, here to represent my client at 246 Miles Manor. Been here a few times. We made quite a few adjustments just for height, scale, size of the house. Most of the front of the house has already been we've gone through, and I think everybody seems to like where that is. Most of it was kind of the rear of the house, the height, trying to get it that down to scale to the rest of Winslow. So we've made those adjustments. We've submitted a few, schemes, mainly because of setbacks. We had to get the lot platted, and with that came the new restrictions. And we're going off the old, the neighborhood plats before. But, which was 15-foot setbacks, which you see there. The new restrictions are 25-foot average on Winslow. So made the house pretty much a shotgun house, pretty small width. And we also submitted a 20-foot just to show those differences. So we'll be requesting a 15 or a 20, or setback for the 15-foot or the 20-foot encroachment, so.
Okay. Staff, Elizabeth?
Thank you. So we would like to thank the applicant for returning to DRC. This project was deferred during the November 2024 Historic Zoning Commission meeting. The applicant has since completed the survey, as mentioned, and plat recording for the property, and a 25-foot side setback or front setback along Winslow Road was recorded. As a reminder, this is a corner lot, and so there are two fronts, one along that fronts Miles Manor Court and the one along Winslow Road. The applicant will be seeking a variance for the required setback along the frontage for Winslow Road if the design for the building is more appropriate within the neighborhood, but as approved by the commission with a setback of either 15 feet or 20 feet. As we go through these plans, the first set demonstrates the 15-foot setback along Winslow Road, and this is what we have more or less previously seen. This plan has been slightly altered from November to enclose a window on the right elevation that faces inward and change the rear entrance by the garage to be a full door and not a half gate. The width of the house at this setback is 36 feet 10 inches. So as we progress in the plans, the next set of plans shows the plan with a 20-foot side setback along Winslow Road. This plan that removes the side porch there on Winslow Road and replaces it with two large windows. These windows, as proposed, are not in keeping with the traditional solid to void ratio that is seen and alters the rhythm of windows on this side. The width of the house with this setback is 31 feet 11 inches. And as the plans continue to evolve with a 25-foot setback, the home becomes very narrow with a front facade. I don't know if it was called out in the plans, but it appears to be about maybe 27 feet. The proportions of the building become incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood, as the front mass would be greatly different than what is seen, while the height and side mass remain the same, which would not be common for the development pattern that is seen along these two streets. So although the homes along Miles Manor Court are not constructed with the guidelines in mind when they were done so, and were completed with a previous zoning ordinance, the homes range in width of the front facades from 42 feet to 38 feet, 42 feet, and then 47 feet. The home at the other end of the street, that is also a corner lot on Miles Manor Court, maintains approximately a 15-foot setback from the property line with approximately an additional 15 feet of right-of-way to the side street. So although that was constructed in a previous zoning ordinance and setback requirements, we did want to mention that as well. But we do need to maintain the compatibility with the setback along Winslow Road as well. So the guidelines would recommend to maintain the rhythm and placement of buildings along the street, to locate new buildings to be secondary in prominence to historic buildings, and to not block the view of historic buildings from public view, and to maintain the alignment of the existing front yard setbacks on the block face while adhering to the zoning ordinance requirements. The placement of the building with a 15-foot setback would locate the building to be approximately 10 feet in front of the other homes fronting Winslow Road and would break the pattern of development seen along the street. The placement of the building at 20 feet would better align with the guidelines with the building and the adjacent buildings while maintaining a scale and proportions that are more traditional and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. So we would like some guidance and feedback for the applicant to provide them direction when they seek their variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, you want to start us off?
Well, still trying to wrap my head around all of this and the setbacks.
Okay.
But a question I do have to ask is, so at the 20-foot, what is your frontage? I mean, so what is the width of the house?
At 20 foot, I believe it's about 32 feet.
32 feet.
Yeah, the site plan says 32 foot 8.
30 foot, thank you.
Yep.
And then at 25, it was what, 27?
36 foot 10.
At 25, it's the 27.
27.
Oh, 27.9,
15,
excuse me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the about 38.
got those backwards.
Yeah, so I realize that this throws a lot of uncertainty in that package. I mean, I think to see a shotgun house that doesn't quite fit the neighborhood, doesn't do the neighborhood any justice either. So staff seems to be recommending, maybe, I don't know if that's a recommendation or a suggestion, that it be the 20 instead of the 15, or the 25. So where do you come down on that?
I mean, we would love the 15 because it gives us more square footage to work with, and because we've already sacrificed a lot on the second floor for the height restriction on Winslow, so we gave up another bedroom on the second floor, so we only have 2 bedrooms upstairs. But the 15 would be our hope, but, you know, we'll take what we can get, so.
The only other thing that I would, and I'd like to hear other people's comments on that, but it is the wooden structure. It looks like to me, it looks like a floating wooden structure with a brick foundation on the back. I see mainly a brick structure in all 3 renditions. So I just wanted to ask you about that. I mean, was there a particular reason why you went with a wooden?
It was, I think it grew over time just for our different meetings that we've had here. I think we had it all brick one time, felt too massive, and then we tried to create the front to be the original with kind of add-on during time. Now the back is kind of where that came from. It also is to kind of scale down the back a little bit, make it not seem as massive or I guess as bold as, you know, the front, so.
Yeah, I was wondering if some insets, you know, would help with some of that massing too, but I mean, just to me, it looks like a wooden structure that's been raised up on a large brick foundation. That's just a comment.
Yeah. That's been kind of the comments throughout the process. With the alley basement fed house is kind of, you know, to have any structure above it was already going to feel like it's floating. So we did have, the 15 foot creates a little bit more of that layers because it gave us more square footage to work with. We had a porch on the side on the 15 foot version just to kind of create that kind of feel on the right elevation with layers and kind of breaking that up a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Holly?
So the overall shape and style of the house I actually really like. I think that the brick and wood mix is a little bit weird, like Brian was saying. My main problem with it is the massive amount of roof that you can see from the front elevation. Like if you look at page 21, when you're looking straight at it, it's got this nice gable and then just like a huge amount of roof from the side-facing gable at the top. So I don't know if the height is something we've already that is fine, or if it can be lowered, or what the deal is with that as far as what's allowed. Staff, do you have anything to say, or is the height fine? Is it just the style that makes it look like that, or what?
For this specific plan set on the screen?
Yeah, so the second story is like the tallest part of the porch is 5 feet shorter than the ridge of the that side-facing gable, and so there's a huge amount of roof on both sides and above the porch. So to me, that just looks strange. So
And
I'm not sure.
With this scheme, it would be the worst because with the 25 foot, the one we're seeing here, that gable gets smaller because the house squeezes in. So that would actually look better with the wider, the 15 or 20, because that ridge line of the porch would actually get higher.
Okay, so we can kind of wait and see what happens with that. Okay.
Yeah. As you can see in the 15 foot there, you can already tell with the higher ridge point of the porch.
Yeah,
So-
that one looks a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? That's it. Okay, thank you. Bob?
I think you worked on proportions, like on the windows. The only thing that really gives me pause is the gable in the front. It just seems so pronounced for the rest of the house. I know that's going to impact, you know, that front bedroom, but if you possibly had dormers, you know, or rather than this large mass that's above the front porch.
Okay.
We'll look at that. Again, part of the problem there was we lost so much house on the back end because of the height. We really have nowhere else to go except for
I
forward. So
agree with the other commissioners on the materials. Just from the rendering, this isn't a word, but it looks a little bricky. You know, if you kind of mixed up the materials, it might help give some pronounced sections of the house, it makes it fit in better.
Yeah, the front porch gable does look a little heavy, and I'm wondering if it's really the base that's playing a trick on our eye a little bit. The finished floor is up a little bit because you're trying to
Yeah.
get something in the basement.
Yeah, it's pretty close to what the other houses are doing.
Yeah.
I think they're all about 7 or 8 risers.
So that means there's a lot of brick, there's a lot of heavy down low, and then you've got these pilasters that kind of express themselves up and hold the columns. If those pilasters just went away and you just had longer columns, I think the porch would just feel a little more slender and not so
Right.
heavy. Just considering how much brick is down
Yeah.
there, I mean, was that 4.5 feet of brick? That's a lot of brick. And then that, gets landscaped, so it'll kind of go away. I'm trying to think of kind of a creative way to honor both streets here. And that's always been the challenge on this one. I think that exhibit that staff showed with the 15, 20, 25 setback, and you kind of see the house beyond, is pretty telling. And I think they're saying 20 is probably like the closest to the front of those houses, which I agree. We don't probably want a new house that doesn't front that street to be out in front of those houses, right? So I'm wondering if there's some variety where we could allow this front mass of the house to, maybe it does get the 15-foot setback like the opposite corner, but we step back in, and this is something that we would review eventually anyways, step back in so that there's a transition from the fronts of the other houses, and something on your house aligns with that.
I think we would like that
and
also.
then bumps out a little. And it's going to do a couple things too to the architecture. It's going to give you some better places to break the brick house off from whatever that skinnier element
for sure.
is. Because right now it's pretty flat down both
Yeah.
sides, and you have to do that because you've only got like 27 feet of width. So it might help you from a mass perspective. It's probably not what everybody loves to hear. Like, well, what are we going to do? The commission, when it goes to a voting meeting, I think they're going to be asking for a recommendation to go get a BZA
Yeah.
determination on setback, right? So, in that regard, we might be saying, well, we'd like for BZA to approve 15 feet like the other house.
Mhm.
But then when it comes back, we might be saying, well, not the whole thing gets 15, maybe the front part, and it steps back to maybe less than 20, whatever lines up with the front of that other house. I think that would be a good way to transition, because what I don't want this to feel like is that it's dwarfed by the big yellow house that's right next to it, which is what you see today, which is a different issue, right? So I don't know how everybody else feels like about that, but I feel like some transitional movement in that. What I don't want is a big flat side facing the road. I think it does the neighborhood a disservice and the architecture of your building. So I'd love to hear other people's comments on that, if that just sounds like the worst idea in the world, or I don't know.
I think it sounds like a great solution. I think it would help complement, maybe it actually complements both sides of those street views.
Yeah.
I like that.
Just to clarify, for the process for seeking a variance for the side setbacks, we would recommend that they come get approval from the Historic Zoning Commission, and the side setbacks be a condition of approval that they go seek a variance with that
That's right.
being met. So the plan would be approved by you all, and they would seek a variance, and that would support their variance request as well.
So you'd bring your
Yep.
final design to us, we'd approve whatever this
Okay.
jig jog is, and then you'd go get the variance based on the jig jog.
All
That's a
right.
technical term.
Yeah.
I went to school to learn that one.
So,
All right, is
so
that-
our
is
next
that-
step will be to design with which I like, the front part of the house being the 15-foot is what we're asking for, the back house be the 20 feet. And
Yeah,
then,
that's
like
it.
you said,
Yeah.
that'll give it great layers, create that separation, let us play with little layering a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we go to the HCC for next. Again,
Yes, yeah, the voting
again.
body. Hopefully there'll be more of us, otherwise we can't vote. Is that good?
Yep.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Anybody?
Thank you.
Is that good? All right.
Appreciate it.
Yes, I need a break too. Let's come back at 5:36. Is 5 minutes enough? Okay, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll move on to item number 8. Switch us back on. Welcome back. Let's continue on our agenda. Item number 8 here, discussion of new construction, the Belonging Co. Franklin Church at 370 Franklin Road, and Luke Dougal. And Gina.
How are you, everyone? Okay. If you don't mind going to the second page for the map. Okay, this is a site, this is a church that we have been working on. They have a location in Nashville, and they have been worshiping in Franklin, but do not have a permanent space. They've been renting a space, and they found the site at the corner of MacHatcher and Franklin Road, and currently have it under contract. So it recently went through a rezone to go to CI, which was approved. And so now we are starting the process with you all just to make sure we're moving in the right direction. They want to have some assurance that the site plan will be approved before they close on the property. So this is a very visible site, as you all know, on the corner of MacHatcher and Franklin. It's in the Central Franklin overlay, it's in the Scenic Corridor overlay, and also the Historic Preservation overlay. So when I go to this next plan, don't look too much at the building shape, which is showing you what the footprint is looking like. But what you'll see there, where we have those dashed lines, if you can see them, there's a 150-foot setback on each side for that Scenic Corridor overlay. Really trying to preserve this site as much as possible. And one of the discussions, we've had a few discussions with staff, which have been very helpful. You know, this is CI zoning, so more of a civic institutional building, and at the same time, this is a church, and this is a Scenic Corridor overlay, so there is a little bit of how do we approach this looking at a rural church and at the same time a civic building. And so that's something we've been trying to work through, how do those two work together. This is a very prominent site that you see. Something else that you'll see as we go through these drawings from front to back, from MacHatcher as you go down Franklin Road toward the factory, there's quite a bit of grade change on this site. Probably don't realize it as much when you're driving by, but it's quite a bit. And so we think that actually may help us because it tucks the building a little bit further into the site. What we're showing will be a two-story building. So I've included some floor plans, not necessarily to spend time, but just to give you bearings of where are we showing entrances and things of that nature. So on the, you'll see where the lobby is located on this plan. Well, I may start on the second floor because the way this site is oriented is there will be a one-story building on MacHatcher, and then you slope down the site, and as you get, and I'll show you this in some massing in a minute, as you get toward the back of the site where these two X's are, that is where it becomes 2 stories because the site is just sloping down the property. So I'll go back to the site plan and you can see it a little better. So at the, I don't know if I can point to that. At the very top, at the MacHatcher side, it's 1 story, and as you slope away is where it gets taller to be the 2 story. And in the center of it, as you can see in these floor plans, we have the auditorium. So the auditorium is sloped seating with a stage down at the bottom. Okay, so one of the things this is just some views around the site, just to orient you all. There are some trees that basically circle the site, and then it is really a fairly cleared site through the middle, which we are maintaining. One thing on the site plan that you all saw was something else that the zoning and the overlays all say is we want the building to be positioned to where it has a front door at the corner. And we're at a corner site, so we've really pushed the building up to the 150-foot line on both spots. So you could really get that prominent corner. We're proposing an entry at the top left side of the building at MacHatcher, and then there will be a secondary entry at the back of the building, but keeping all the parking behind. So this is close to what we need from a code-required parking standpoint for the seating capacity of the sanctuary, but you can see how we're trying to get it as far behind the building as possible. Okay, so what we would love some feedback on is, this is very early. These are just massings that we're working on to try to get the right fit. We initially had a larger massing in the middle with a smaller, flatter massing around the sides. And what we talked about with staff was how can we break this building up? And again, how do we make this feel like a civic building that's really fronting MacHatcher and Franklin Road, 2 very prominent streets, but at the same time really being sensitive to this rural church aesthetic that might make sense in the scenic overlay. So I'll go through a few of these, and just any feedback you have would be helpful for us as we move forward through this. where you see that gable on the front with the arrow pointing toward Mac Hatcher, that will be that'll be the main entry that I mentioned on Mac Hatcher. And then next to that is a smaller mass with that larger mass in the middle, really signifying where the sanctuary is. And then you can see how it works as you slope down the side. That gable that runs front to back from Mac Hatcher down to Franklin Road, entry on front and back of that. And I think this is a few views around that site. So you can really see how it, when you're on Franklin Road, when you're on Mac Hatcher. And what we were hoping with this, we'll show you some images a little bit further down of some rural churches that we pulled some inspiration from. We're hoping that between the gable and some of the materiality that we use, this is a prominent site. It is only a 2-story building, but the gables we were hoping would give it more of a civic feel on that corner. But then that also speaks a little bit to the rural church. So that bottom right image is the one that you'll really see if you were up on Mac Hatcher, as you're coming down Franklin Road. This is another option that we had, doing something very similar, but just orienting the flat portions a little bit differently. So I'll just kind of go through those quickly since they're similar. The third one, we started out here first, in all honesty, maybe don't like where it's ending as much. But again, the architecture that you'll see in the front right corner, that is where a main entry would be. In a lot of the rural churches you see, there's a gable within a gable, and that's really how they approached the building. So we were looking at doing something like that, but trying to not have as much of a flat massing along Franklin Road. And something else we were also looking at is agrarian structures, and so you'll see a little bit of that in some of this massing. Here's another one with a, again, similar larger massing, gable on the side. So we had something fronting Franklin Road and Mac Hatcher in these kind of views, but a much larger gable that isn't broken up on the sides like we did with the other ones. And this shows you what those views are. This one is more of a, more, I guess, typical cross, axial plan where you have the two gables crossing. Again, creates something on Franklin Road, and Mac Hatcher has more significance as a church in this kind of viewpoint as well, with smaller flat sections around the site. These are some of the images that we were talking about from more of a rural church. Many of them are white. We're proposing, we haven't gotten to show that yet and all the details in these, but we're thinking it would be white painted brick on this corner. That is the materiality we're looking at. That works within the zoning code to be masonry and with what CI is required. But what we liked about a lot of these is the gable within a gable, simple structures. This is a bigger sanctuary for more people. It seats 1,000 to 1,200, so it won't be quite this size. But we're trying to scale it down, massing as much as we can as you work around the site. These are a few other examples. The bottom left is one that a church that we have worked on before. That's what we really like, how those two gables cross and sort of promote that scale. What we liked about the top middle one was really, we looked at that almost like a barn or an older structure, and how can we have something that is more a rural aesthetic on this corner, yet still be more prominent. These aren't exactly what we're looking at, but what we like about all of these, because what we're showing in the massing right now is just big, flat, it's just a massing. What we would like to do to look at breaking this up is a lot of brick detailing, things like that. If you look at St. Paul, even downtown, they have some really nice brickwork around all their windows. Those have more of an arched opening on their windows. We would probably do something more rectangular, but a similar kind of detailing. We like that simplicity of what they did there. So that's all we have to start. So would love any feedback.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth?
Thank you. So we'd like to thank the applicant for attending DRC and for meeting with staff prior to submitting as well. A new civic building is proposed to be constructed on the corner of Mac Hatcher Parkway and Franklin Road. This is located in the Franklin Road Historic District, as well as the Scenic Corridor and the Central Franklin Overlay. The site offers challenges with a changing topography and slope through the site. And this is more of a preliminary discussion for massing, form, and possibly some details, detailing and material discussions. So the main entrance for the location and placement and orientation, it does appear to be appropriate with the main entrance located facing a road. And this In these renditions, they have chosen Mac Hatcher as that primary road to where the entrance will be located. So one question we do have for the commission is, does this placement and form create visual emphasis that this is a civic building? The guidelines recommend the following for the building form: to design a new civic building to be contextually sensitive to the historic district and so that it does not detract from or overwhelm nearby buildings. Achieve a civic presence through the use of tall floor-to-ceiling heights on the ground floor and through the use of pronounced base and ornamentation. Design the architectural elements using defined base, middle, and cap divisions. Design steeples, bell towers, and other typical civic appurtenances to be consistent with the height of those on historic civic buildings in the district. So more information is needed to understand the total height of the building. But as for some of the 5 options that are proposed here within the plan set, the use of a pitched roof creates a more traditional form for a civic building that may be more contextually sensitive to the location that it is in, and creates that more traditional massing for a civic building in Franklin. And so for materials, it is recommended to use building materials that create a sense of permanence, such as brick or stone in the guidelines. The CFO, the Central Franklin Overlay material requirements for a civic building also let you choose 2 of the following: brick, natural stone, cultured stone, smooth wood siding, or fiber cement siding with an additional accent material that could be 25% of the facade. So we would like some guidance and feedback on the proposed forms and as they transition in height and scale to the rear of the property where it becomes 2 stories, as well as just the cross gable and how those are more permanent and prominent civic structures that transition in that area as well.
All right, thank you. Bob? Still absorbing?
Still absorbing. I would take my inspiration from the Methodist Church and from the Presbyterian Church just up Franklin Road. I think this is an unusual place to have to, I mean, I just think it's going to be you have to be very sensitive on how this is going to appear, since it is an entrance into the city. It's really the last entrance that hasn't really been mucked with. I would, whether you did it or not, I would still try to have some appearance of a traditional looking church facing Franklin Road, because that's the historical road. As far as design and all that, I mean, you're in the early stages, so I can't really give you anything. I just might lean a little more towards something more historical context.
Okay. Brian?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Bob that your prominent road is Franklin Road. Mac Hatcher is a relatively new road. And then across from basically the structure, or very near it, is going to be Creekside, which is a very prominent historical structure that is a brick Greek Revival residence. I'm concerned, so I do think a pitched gable, I think that was part of being sensitive to the historic district with that. But one thing I'm concerned, especially with the auditorium, is that I don't know where your height and your width ratio is going to be, but the wider you get, and then you're limited on your height, you've got this very squatty triangle. And it to me, that doesn't speak to some of the inspirational photographs that we saw. So I mean, if there's a way to incorporate some of that and then break off into wings, I don't know. I think a lot of times, especially with modern architects, we start off with the floor plans and all the things that we want, and then we build around it. And I think if we could kind of zero in on, how this looks historically in that neighborhood and blends with it, and then get that floor plan to work somehow within that. And I don't know at this point what the height, where we would actually, for historic guidance, suggest the height comes from. The current Methodist church that's built, behind it, Creekside, where is going to be for this civic building where height's concerned?
So the guidelines state to design the height of new civic buildings to be consistent with the height of the historic buildings in the district, which should not exceed 2 or 3 stories or be any taller than the commercial buildings on Main Street. So I don't know if that would be just for that block, that corner, any of the adjacent buildings on that. So the United Methodist would be the closest building to the site for height comparison. But that is also not a historic building.
That's true. So could downtown, or does that just apply to any building being built in the 16 block downtown area? Since this is outside of that, can the downtown height of those buildings be used?
So it does say which should not exceed 2 or 3 stories or be any taller than any commercial buildings on Main Street. It doesn't indicate that the height would be restricted furthermore because it is not in the downtown core. But it should be compatible with the surrounding buildings as well with height.
Yeah, and that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, and I see this lot as a challenge with the setbacks you have to maintain and your parking.
And I will say, one thing that may be hard to see on those floor plans that may help, is significant, if you look at the level 1, this may help when you're looking at the height. Where you see that hatch pattern, that's all, oh, sorry, yes, I should go back to that. This one, let me go back one more. This right here, everywhere on the top side of the page where you see that hatch, that's really showing where it's subgrade. So I think that does help us not really get too tall. So everything behind that auditorium there is actually underground. Those are like studios, recording, things like that, but that's actually all underground. So that whole side of Franklin Road where that is 1 story. And then only when you get to that youth auditorium does it pop up to 2. So the first level of our auditorium, our sanctuary, is actually sunken. So I think that will help us maybe better control that height. I think if you go to the top of that gable, it's somewhere in the 40-foot range right now. We should have brought that today, but that's just to give you an idea of where it's sitting right now.
And help me on with the site plan here. Where is the entrance? So
Yeah.
oriented here, so Franklin Road is going to be, I guess, to the right?
To the right, correct.
And then Mac Hatcher would kind of be towards the top? So where would the entrance to what would you see from Franklin Road? What do you envision seeing from Franklin Road?
So the good thing is, if I go to this plan, you'll see it's tricky because the site just slopes off. So it's hard to see it between these 2 plans. But on that right side, you'll see that bar there. It's the 1 story. That's actually where their office space is shown to be right now. So I think it's a good opportunity to get some nice glazing in there, some regular, we're not trying to do big window walls, but just some nice regular windows, punched windows along that side. We think that could really be a nice entry point. And then right next to that, as you go back to this plan, when you get to the 2-story, there is a little entrance. This doesn't show up when I push on this, but like you see that youth auditorium right next to it. That's another entry piece that we're working on making that look more like an entry piece. It'll be a little bit more of a secondary entry, but from the outside it will look more like an entry. Since we don't have parking on that side, the reality is, more people will be parking and walking in there. So we do think we can get, our idea for Franklin Road is that we can get a more regular sort of window rhythm along that side. But that's just things that we got to work on still.
And I realize that it'll be good to see this as it progresses.
Yes.
But just to say that, this really it doesn't need to look like just this contemporary civic institution building. It's got to somehow, not compete or contrast too much, even with Creekside. So there's just a lot of moving parts. I like some of your inspirational drawings. I kind of thought, some of those look like historic kind of churches. But the wider you make your building, the more that gable is going to look more contemporary. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Holly?
Yeah, I have a couple comments and questions kind of along the lines of what Brian's saying. So I like the idea of it looking like a church, and I love your images here, the rural churches that are white that have the double gable there. I really like that. As far as the examples of massing, though, that you have, which one of them is kind of like this? Because they do look like they're more sprawling and not really this style of.
Yes, and those are very, I'll say, all the rural churches. That's the thing that we've been sort of fighting with a little bit they're very small. You know, they probably seat less than 200 people.
Yeah.
And this is a much bigger site than where all those are located. So that's the piece, if we're trying to figure out how can we break it up to have a massing that's sort of reminiscent of that while still being civic. And that's kind of where we're trying to go with these, so.
I think it's on Arno Road, but there's a church there kind of near Page High School on the way south that is kind of a Gothic church that looks similar to these inspiration photos. I don't know how big that is, but it's always been one of my favorite churches. It looks like a church, looks historic and all that. I don't know how many people that seats or if that's anything like that would be an option for this, but it looks like somebody has built something kind of like the inspiration pictures. And oh, really? Okay. I think there's just so many contemporary churches now that look like contemporary churches but aren't very special. And this is such a great opportunity to do a more historic looking church that really looks like a church. So I think you're definitely on the right track with the inspiration photos. I would just like to, I hope that it's possible with the size you need to build it so it actually looks like that rather than just the kind of sprawling contemporary church. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is tough. I mean, it took me a minute to get oriented to the plans, and then I was like, oh, it's the way I describe it in my Kentucky redneck brain is it's a walkout basement. So I was like, oh yeah, it's a walkout basement. Now I kind of am understanding. Yeah, I think this is going to be an exercise. You've got this massing, but I think you're on the right track with some pitched roof, gable forms, and some flat roof. I'm not convinced that you're not going to have to maybe bookend some flat roof sections so that the corners, the way you address both road frontages feel like gable ends, and it may be kind of bridge connected via some flat roof sections. And it will allow you to kind of undulate and break things down into a scale that looks like these kind of rural churches, because otherwise these really big long gables are either going to be too tall or too flat. It's just may not get you where you need to go. And then there's some varieties of roof where they pitch up to a flat, and if it's done well you can't see it. I'm thinking of there's like 3 gymnasiums at Curry Ingram Academy, and they all have flat roofs, but nobody knows they're flat roofs. They're all pitched all the way around. So there may be some of that may be a useful mechanism in making it look like it's a pitched roof form, but you've got a lot of volume. And like I said, that particular gym is 3 full-size gymnasiums, but it looks like a pitched roof building. So I think when I look at these massings that you sent, I think the last one with the cross gable is most appealing, but I'm not sure that it's there yet. Like I said, I think if one of these gables or one of these ridges moves to the edge and you kind of bookend something, maybe that gets you where you need to go. But to have maybe a flat roof section right at the corner, I just don't know how it would look. And not to say it wouldn't look good, because you think about downtown, Franklin is almost all flat roof. So there's probably ways to do it. And then what I'd also say is there could be something useful in not being symmetrical too. And I know I just said, well, this is the only one that was really symmetrical. But breaking the symmetry and trying to break up those big flat walls, I think we said that on a previous project. If we can, especially on a building that, what is this, 300 feet long? And so when you start to break it down into sections that are 40 feet or less. And I think the exercise that the city of Franklin did with their architect on the new city hall, I mean, they looked really closely at what are some of these widths and depths that are seen around town, and how do we start to break down the mass into sections that are familiar in that kind of cadence and rhythm that we see in downtown. So, yeah, that's, based on what you brought, that's kind of the feedback I've got on the massing. I actually love this top center black picture with the glass. Do I think it's appropriate on Franklin Road or Mac Hatcher? Probably not, but you know, if you've got sort of a traditional form and massing and punched openings and brick detailing that brings a richness on those two sides, maybe there's an opportunity for some more kind of contemporary interpretations. What I'd say about that, when I looked at this, I thought, you know, that could be a civic building if the materials are civic. And I know that sounds kind of funny to say, but the way zoning reads with these materials, brick, stone, if it's got a permanence to it, then I think it could be really pretty. I'm thinking of the theater at, what school is that? CPA, their new theater kind of has that glass box on the front. That sort of language might be appropriate to the interior. It's facing the Methodist Church, which, even though it has some historic materials, definitely has a contemporary, it's a contemporary use of kind of historic materials. So I think you have some opportunities there. So that's anything else? Any specific, other than what we've talked about? I kind of wrote down materials, pitch roof, main entrance. I like the main entrance there.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that coming out of Franklin, there ought not be some celebration of the entrance that's down at that corner. Does that make sense? Whether it's a porchy element or something that says entrance, because that's the way people are going to approach having an entrance on Mac Hatcher. And is there a vehicular entrance off Mac Hatcher? Do you think there will be?
We cannot have it.
Yeah, so I'm thinking to have the entrance there, you're going to have to convince people to walk around that way.
We have some parking up at that side, but yes, we've kind of been looking at it from both sides.
Maybe it's something that's kind of corner addressed, and I know that we talked about that with City Hall too. It's like maybe it's not coming out of the corner, but the corner's held by something that's a marker.
Is there any comments about, I know the parking is somewhat laid out in a way we have to. I haven't heard any comments about that, so I'm assuming no real comments towards
How much of this south side is floodplain?
So the line, see where that little biopond is on the right side?
Yeah.
There, it comes close to that if you go across toward the Methodist Church, in that general area.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind the parking. You know, I know planning's going to have all kinds of feedback on tree wells and all that stuff, which I'm a huge fan of. I like that there's this kind of buffer. Are we not allowed to park in that 150-foot setback either?
No.
Is that correct? And I like that. I think it's good. So there's going to be a pretty good swath of green, which I like. Is there going to be a playground, park, any of that for?
We have not talked about a playground or anything like that. There will probably be pedestrian paths that will go in that 150 feet, which is allowed. So we don't have that shown yet, but that's something we will.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see. And those are the types of things that, as the park responds to the architecture, and there's kind of the blending of the in and out with your fenestration, that's what the public's going to see. And I think it's important that the landscape and the building kind of do both things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Good. Thank you all. All right. Number 9. Discussion of partial demolition and new construction at 251 2nd Avenue, South, the Ice House. Brandon Pretty, back again.
What's that? Oh, okay. Oh.
They don't even let us drive the
I've
ship.
never had such power before. Didn't go to my head. right. This is the old Ice House Antique Mall. This is the third scheme we've come with. I think we've kind of progressively evolved it back scope-wise as far as what's being proposed. This is actually, and I just kind of included this for reference, this was from last May, previous submittal where we were keeping the two primary pieces along margin and then removing the center. We've gone back now and are essentially keeping all that along margin. I guess is just to clarify what we're looking for here is not a full design review, it's a preliminary recommendation, is that the term? Not what we're looking for now, but what we're going to submit on is kind of a massing model, and a preliminary recommendation, I believe, is the term out of the guidelines. Really what our owner wants is, and this was kind of coming out of the site visit we did in November, I believe it was, and we kind of decided, our owner was just wanting to get some direction to get him comfortable moving forward. So it was, well, let's get the massing figured out before we delve deeply into final design and final elevations. So again, this is for reference. What you'll see moving forward are some massing models we put together and just a larger discussion about size and heights.
And let me add, so since you're just going to be doing a site plan, you will not be coming to the Historic Zoning Commission for a preliminary recommendation.
Oh, that doesn't go through historic?
So it's only with the development plan that
Okay.
if you're doing a development plan, then it'll have to come to the Historic Zoning Commission to get a
Okay.
preliminary recommendation.
All right.
But since I believe that you can just do a site plan, you'll just get a COA.
Okay. Well, the process part we'll figure out. I
Yeah.
guess if we could talk about the massing here, that'll give us, again, give our owner some comfort level before he puts a whole lot into design and to what ultimately, size and massing wise, what can be approved. And I appreciate y'all's patience. This is a difficult site. So I would say here, I'm just going to move forward. Again, this is what was previously proposed. As a reminder, the red is that current jiu-jitsu studio. It was a church in the past. I think what we determined on the site visit is there's really nothing visible, and please correct me if I'm saying anything different from what y'all remember who were out there. There's nothing visible or really existing that's historic. If you look at old aerial images, there was something there, but it's clearly nothing. It's none of that brick. It's none of the roof detailing, any of that. I think everything, that was all done in the early 90s, so we're proposing for that to be removed as it's not contributing as we understand. This, again, just for historic context, this is the view today along South Margin, and then a photograph circa 1958, give or take. And then just as a general statement on uses, owners looking at a coffee shop, salon, coffee roaster, potentially some residences. All these uses are zoned, so nothing. We're just kind of including that so for reference. So this is looking along margin, and the biggest, I guess, change we're proposing here, and this is actually supported in some historic information we had from the last DRC submittal. This kind of overbuild piece that we've got highlighted in yellow, that's clearly something that was added, as you can see here, was added sometime in the 80s. So again, not contributing. We're proposing to pull that back. If you get in there, the structure's pretty kind of tossed. They basically built that over an existing roof. They built it out of, some of them are 2x4, some of them are just kind of sticks of wood, but again, nothing contributing or historic. We're proposing to remove that piece and allow some re-roof over top of the existing CMU, the old chicken plant. Here is a 3D view of what's being proposed. Again, the blue is for removal of the jiu-jitsu studio. The yellow is removal of the overbuild, re-roof there. The pink, where that overbuild continues, we would have to do some rework, some new roofing at the pink area. And then the yellow is, and there'll be a couple images that show that better here in a moment, but the yellow is kind of building up from the existing on the rear. So this is a rear view, rear elevation. This is if you're in that parking lot with Second Avenue to your right. So looking directly at the rear of the building. And again, what we're proposing, the gray is kind of the massing of the new piece we'd propose. We've got the height there clearly down below the height of the primary volume as we're seeing at the old chicken plant. We're potentially proposing some new windows depending on uses. And then where we're showing the shed dormer, that's a piece we would add on to open up some space and create a little more volume. And then between the brick, the old ice house and the chicken plant, that piece on the rear, it's where that overbuild continues through. That's where we would propose new roof and some rework just to clean that up. And this is a more perspective view of what you'd see back there. And this next, I'm going to go to the next image because you can see the roof area. Here we go. Oh, it doesn't show up on the screen. If you see the entrance off the rear, that kind of white roof area above that, that's kind of the continuation of that overbuild. That's part of what we're trying to clean up on the back. So when you see removal and then we're replacing it with that, with a larger canopy and some expanded outdoor seating area, that's kind of our attempt at cleaning that up. And again, a view kind of standing at South Margin. On the top, you can see where we're proposing 2 levels of most likely some sort of multifamily residential component. And again, as a reminder, the height is several feet below the roof of the adjacent chicken plant there. We're not removing any of what's directly along South Margin. And that is what we've got. So really just getting clarity that what is proposed for removal and replacement and scale of that, just getting some thoughts on that.
Okay. Let's hear from Emily.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the building located at 251 Second Avenue South is contributing within the National Register District. The National Register defines this building as an 1890 one-story brick commercial building which is attached with a circa 1940 concrete block commercial building. The brick section that faces both Second Avenue South and South Margin Street, while the concrete block section faces South Margin Street. The brick section has a gable metal roof and a gabled parapet wall facing South Margin Street. The windows are circa 1980 paired aluminum fixed design with a soldier course arches. Entrances on the rear or the south elevation are also circa 1980 paired 5-panel wood doors and a paired solid metal doors. And we commend the applicant for incorporating the feedback from the previous DRC meetings and during the site visit to explore the massing on the building and to be sensitive to the adjacent historic buildings that are neighboring the site. We did want to comment on, let's see, we'll pull up this view facing South Margin Street. So these alterations appear to utilize some of the same openings that were previously utilized for windows and doors. And same thing kind of in this area that has kind of the larger storefront. You can see kind of in this area it was a larger entrance for vehicles to come through. And so we did want to get clarification from the applicant on kind of this view. So what would be the new construction height of what is proposed versus what is existing on the site?
I believe the height is on the, so let's say 28. Well, if only I had it. It does say 28. So 28, okay. That's 28. That's taller than what's there now because currently the eave on that single story is 12, 14,
So it's proposed to be 28, or
Yes.
it is,
proposed. to
what
be-
is it?
We would remove what's there now. What's there now, I can't remember the exact height. Let's see if we had a better image. Again, it's single story. It's, if I had to guess, like 14, something like that, because
Okay.
it's, would be a little higher than that. But what we're proposing would be, the eave there would be slightly taller than what's there now,
Okay.
but it would be stepped back off of south margin.
Thank you.
Anything else from staff? No? Okay. Let's let Holly go first.
I think this is really good. I think it's a major improvement on what's there, and it's mostly been reused. And the additions to it, like the dormer, are, I think, they're secondary to the original structure and look really good. The building you're proposing to tear down, I think, the original building doesn't make any sense there anyway. Like, it's facing the wrong way, it's the wrong style and everything. So I think it's fine to take that one down. Yeah, I think it's really good. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brian?
Well, let's start with the overbuilt piece, because, I mean, I think actually removing the overbuilt piece that was done clearly in the 1980s, and actually you'd be revealing a little more brick on the inside portion of the old ice house. I think that would actually add to the character of the building and the site. On the site where so we're talking about tearing it down and putting the two-story structure. So what was there, those were the receiving sheds. That's where they brought chickens in. So it had a dirt floor, and the chickens were brought into the receiving sheds to be processed. That way they got them off the street. That photograph that you saw earlier where the trucks are backed off from the street into that, it got them off the street. So now they're now into that building, which was the receiving shed. At some point, apparently, Bill DePriest bricked that on the original footprint. And I don't know, it seems that there's no original material left as far as studs and all that. I don't know, that's what I've heard. But on that original footprint, he bricked it in order to make it into a restaurant. But that didn't take place. The Downtown Presbyterian Church moved into that spot when the two churches decided one to go on Franklin Road and one to stay downtown. So to me, I don't know, is it changed enough over time that now a two-story structure should go into its place? Or should just the height remain to keep the original kind of undulation of that site and then deal with that space? So these are questions I have that I don't have fully answered. But I would say those are the two major, that's the major part of this element that I'm looking at that makes me just ask more questions. So, and I noticed there's a new shed dormer to extend above the existing. And can you say more about that?
So currently, if I were to walk, if you think about where that existing roof is now, if I were to walk in there, I'm walking on an old roof where they overbuilt, right? What we're wanting to do is kind of pop that up and build out to basically to expand and absorb some more of that second level space, to create some second level space that's currently kind of partially an attic space, but really not much. So does that help kind of explain what we're thinking there?
Is it currently within the overbuilt section? Or would it pop up above?
We would pop up above that overbuilt section. So if you extend, here, let me see one of these. Well, if you extend that line, okay, the existing building line, that's the overbuild coming across. So we'd take that away and then would kind of pop a dormer up on that existing roof.
And then new windows would be added kind of below that section. And all of that, the materiality that's in that with the corrugation, I guess the metal and the garage type door, all that was added in the what do you think that material goes back to?
As far as we can tell, because some of that, I mean, a lot of that's just that wood siding.
Oh, it's wood siding?
Yeah,
Okay.
all that kind of light green you're seeing there, that's all, I can't fathom it's that old just because it would have deteriorated, right? If it's older than 30 years, I'd be surprised. So if that's what that is, we would look at an appropriate material to come back with, obviously something that's a little more durable and a little more appropriate than that wood. And we would, whatever we did in that dormer would be of a similar style. Stylistically, obviously, in keeping with what's there, it'll be, kind of a light industrial type of feel. No crown molding here.
Okay, well, thank you.
This proposed two-story structure that would replace what was the Jiu-Jitsu studio, do you have any idea what maybe the material would be? Exterior?
When we have looked at previous iterations, I think, again, in keeping with the existing aesthetic, metal panel seems to make the most sense. We've thought about brick, and we could do that. On one hand, I could see there being a world where that kind of bookends things and feels appropriate, as long as it wasn't something that was competing with or overwhelming the original ice house on the side. That's the star of the show, so we don't want to do anything that's going to confuse or overwhelm that. So those are the two things we've looked at material-wise there.
Okay, well, I really like what you've pulled back from your original proposal. It's brought it more down to scale.
Good. Yeah, I agree with what everybody else has said here. I think that the over roof, removing that makes complete sense. The new dormer, our guidelines talk about dormers, but a dormer on a commercial building is kind of a thing that's not covered so much. But you might pull it's shown like it goes all the way to the edge, so you might pull it back off that edge a little bit, and there's not the existing roof pitch isn't much to speak of, so I don't even know if it would meet the roof pitch requirements of any dormer, even the main roof. So you have to be careful, and it might just be a flat roof popped up section, and the new addition with the two-story, I think's interesting. I have questions about the materiality too. I think the guidelines for commercial buildings kind of call out something more permanent, like masonry, but I don't think that would necessarily be appropriate here with what we've got at the corner. It might just draw attention to itself, so I'm not sure what the guidelines might call out, or even zoning has requirements for some of that, but maybe I'm thinking of civic. But I think new commercial buildings in this district have to have masonry. Is that true? I don't know what I'm talking about 97% of the time, so
I don't let that
take it with
stop
a
me
grain
either.
of
It's
salt.
okay.
So all that to say, I like a lighter material, perceived lighter material, not color, but something that feels like the site, like you described. Yeah, and then I'd be interested to see what that develops as, in terms of fenestration and what the actual detailing comes out to be. They're studying over here. I'm filibustering until they come up with. What do you think?
So the guidelines do recommend to use materials and exterior finishes that complement the historic building, such as frame or brick. Simple glass and metal designs that minimize the number of framing members may be considered on rear facades.
Okay. Well, that's a little nebulous, but yeah, I think metal would be. It may have a brick base or something. Who knows where you go with this? But massing wise, I think it sits below that. Did you say it's the chicken processing house? What's the big tall piece? The main original building.
That part was actually, that's where some of the showers were. They used to be the far middle.
I didn't know you gave chicken showers.
Well, that's for the employees, because it's
Oh.
a nasty job.
Well, I think it being 8 feet below that makes a lot of sense. When you're looking at it, I'm sort of when it comes to massing, a stickler on this kind of eave height thing. So if the top of that parapet sits at the eave or close to the, one of these eave benchmarks that exist, that would be helpful, because it looks like it might be a little taller than the original eave. So if it could be pulled down a little bit, if 26 feet gets you lined up with the eave, do that. It still gives you what I would think is pretty generous 2 stories. Do you have something else, Brian?
Yeah, I want to talk more about this pop-up addition. If you look at your proposal, you have the existing and proposed. It is the rear view at 251 2nd Avenue South. And where you see the dormer pop up, it looks like it extends all the way to the edge of the building, of the actual facade front of that building. And in that sense, it doesn't remind me so much of a dormer, but it's just an addition to make the building taller at that point.
No, I think that's fair, and to the point about roof slope, as we were playing around with the massing of it, we kind of ran into that slope's shallow to begin with. How do you make that a dormer? If I were doing a revision of this, I would probably call that something else, because I think ultimately it is going to be an addition. Another little piece I didn't mention is that area of flat roof that we're going to re-roof. Part of what we're looking at is being able to develop that as like a roof deck that you'd be able to get to from the second level adjacent wise. So if that's the case, I could see that even coming across and down and kind of being an element stepped back off the face of the back of the building, but kind of tying it together with that roof deck. If that makes sense.
One thing to me that just visually appealing, if you look, and you've got a red dashed line that shows where the old roof line hit the ice house. Mm-hmm. But if you follow that line, I mean, it takes the eye right to the ice house, and then it slopes again off. Yep. If you bring it up like you have it here all the way to the edge of the building, it creates this more rectangular, right-angled, facade. Visually, I think it looks better for it to actually angle down to the ice house. So if you were doing a pop-up, you'd want to push off that building wall. So, and I don't even know what our guidelines would speak to, a pop-up like this. It's the same height, it stays the same height as the building. Mm-hmm. And what about the 2-story addition that we're seeing over where the old processing sheds were? So what is the height of that proposed to be?
20, you're talking about the piece kind of on the left as we're looking at
Oh, yeah,
this?
we said that was 28 feet.
Yeah.
And so what is the height of the tallest building on the property existing?
36, is that, yeah?
It says here, yeah.
Oh, so that's the old Farr Mill building.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see it. That's the thing, but it doesn't show up in this.
That's
this
why
rendering.
I wanted this, as I wanted to give a perspective, but the elevation, the previous one here kind of gives, see here. Yeah, that gives a little more
I got
straight
you.
on, here's the height of everything.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Enough to go with?
No, this is perfect. I appreciate,
Okay,
this
good.
is what we needed.
Perfect.
We'll
Thank
be
you
back.
so much. Appreciate it. All right, item number 10. Discussion of new construction, hotel and parking structure and partial demolition at 230 Franklin Road. We have Benton Smothers.
Yes.
Hello.
And I have Reed Tally with me too.
Okay.
Start with the hotel. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So in the past, we've kind of walked through everything. We'll continue to do that unless you guys want to stop at each item. Let me know as we go through it, but I don't want to move too fast and pass up conversation. So the first thing we can talk through is portico share. Last meeting, the comments were to look at adding columns back in a way that helps step down the structure from 2 to 1 and adds more focus to the front of the building. And so we've done that in a few different ways. We've added a scenario with columns. We've sort of beefed up some of the structural items towards the edges of this truss option. And we've also looked at starting to find other ways of achieving some of those goals. For instance, in this example is hardscape, right? Where are the planters and how is that going to interact with the drive lane? It is a 1-car width portico share, and so our opinion was that adding the columns to the 1 width sort of didn't feel quite right, and that the hardscape option achieved similar goals. It might be more appropriate in this scenario. This option looks at the other conversation topic, which is make it more reminiscent of a train stop with the flatter roof and the beefier member. Again, same concept on the columns there. Is we can probably highlight that corner in other ways. We have those two options from several different perspectives. These are from the corners. This is from the side. And this would have been a good one. This is a pretty good example. As you pull around and the kind of shallowness of that car, adding columns there almost feels like uninviting, I think, is a pretty good word for it. And this is something that is a little bit more approachable. So this has the truss structure, which is found a lot around the factory, and we're partial to. And then this one is the beefier structure, probably a little beefier than it needs to be, but still good representation of that more Jameson Station-like C-channel beam concept. The next item we talked about was well, do you guys want to stop and talk about portico share first, or do we just keep on going through?
Let's keep going.
Okay.
We'll stop at the end of hotel, and then we'll rewind and hit each item.
Great. So we talked about this stair structure before. It was, I think, received well. The conversation was around materials, and we've put together some just inspirational imagery. This is not intended to be an open stair. It's just hard to represent in this sort of model. And so there's opportunities for mullion, different types of glazing, but it is kind of that contemporary glazed look. There's different options. These are just inspiration imagery. This one is less of a mullions, more of a channel glass. Next is the cube, otherwise known as the hyphen. We looked at the issue on the cube last meeting was the forehead and how to eliminate that. So this is from the parking lot perspective, and this was achieved by just essentially reportioning the windows. This still has a lot of the same structural elements that are found in the water tower and the other stairwell, and again, the glazing is more inspirational, whether they're channel glass, the same as the stair tower or mullions. Another perspective from that, this also starts to incorporate material differences. And so The cube has the pack cladding type corrugated metal that's approved elsewhere on campus. One of the things that this also starts to do is a previous comment had been, how do you make this cube feel like it's not too floaty, and it has been added and it has support, and how it is how do you make it feel like it's belongs there? And so as we're starting to develop this concept, we're starting to pull elements underneath it and push and pull to where you can kind of start to see how it will interact with a base, which would be masonry. This is from the other side of the pedestrian alley. And so this one, it achieves the forehead solution comes from differing the materials and the depths of them. And so this carries a proportion around the outside. It recesses it a little bit at the top to eliminate that forehead, at least put the focus elsewhere. That is a flat roof up there from equipment, and so that's, you know, something that we want to try to keep. Same thing here, you can see the masonry, how it starts to slide in beneath that cube and feel like it's supporting it. What you can also see here is how we're starting to interact with building 10, the small building on the right, how it's starting to kind of shoot out of it. And I have some more images that we can touch on, but just wanted to point out that that's a direction that we're starting to go in with you guys, is to kind of show you how we're going to start interacting that and start to detail it. Again, this is just showing the cube in relation to the stair tower in building 10. This has the roof over the, what's called the second floor patio. And here we have building 10. This is from under the pedestrian alley. So that opening in building 10 is existing. There's two kind of serving window type openings in the building currently. You can't see it right now because it's hidden behind the addition. This opens it up to the outside pedestrian alley. Okay, this is starting to touch on building 9. This is inspirational imagery on materials. So you can see we're maintaining the form that exists. It's almost like a skeleton that starts to let you see. It echoes what was there before. A lot of the same patterns. For instance, the board and batten will be kind of echoed in materials through the side demising wall to the building 8 pedestrian alley, and then you will start to see some materials that start to echo building 8 as well. And you have this. These are also just inspirational, of course, but you have concrete column pedestals. Those we have those in there now. This starts to get it from a more detailed perspective, more architectural. You'll have a lot of opportunities to salvage the existing wood and use that in areas, for instance, potentially in some of these trellis members. And then, of course, the first bay remains existing. This is just for modeling purposes. That's not what's currently there, but that's not new either. That's supposed to be existing trusses on the right side of the top image, and then you move to the new trellis system to the left. We'll have one more item. So this back elevation is, I can't remember how long, I think it's 220, 230 feet. And so we trigger a 200-foot maximum requirement where you need to provide some sort of change of design or something to separate it. It's challenging because we kind of like that factory aesthetic of that back elevation, and it just feels like it wants to be the same. And so what we've proposed is to take one of the demised portion of the, I'm going to say the middle section here, and extend that cube through the northern bar. That's going to give us more roof space, more rooftop equipment, and also give us a change of appearance where that cube hits the back elevation. The roof change will help set that apart. The material will continue as part of that bar, right? So it's that pack cladding is on the front as well. That'll carry through it. And it'll let us maintain rhythm of those windows and openings along the back. So while we're meeting it by a change of material and shape, we're continuing the pattern across the back that we like. And that is it.
Okay. All right, let's hear from Emily on, if you want to go through all your hotel comments, and that what we're going to do is we'll just take comments like on the porte cochere, and then we'll do the stair. We'll just go through
And there
a
was
couple
one thing
things.
that I left out, and it was left out of this presentation. It was the window study that we asked about, that you guys asked about, and we were supposed to provide. It was showing the existing windows beside the new windows to see how that compares. And so I can pass this around. We don't talk about it if you don't want to. We can if you want to. But if we want to have a follow-up with staff, we can. But it will show you what we did on that. Do you guys?
That's. I'd like to see it. Are we allowed to see that?
I mean, even if it's a casual, just take it home with you. It's still sort of
Yeah,
productive.
we're supposed to just show stuff that was published ahead of time.
We don't have to talk about it tonight. We just got it. So if it's allowed to be submitted, it'd be great. We can certainly follow up with staff to talk more about it before the next DRC too.
Let's just hold it. That makes it simple. You hold it, and you can submit it for next time, or send it to staff. And staff, I think, has a pretty good idea that we're just wanting proportions and things to be similar.
That's what
I mean,
it is. It's
yeah.
it's verifying that our assumptions are aligned with
Okay.
existing conditions.
Yeah. Hang on to those. Let's hear from Emily on the hotel items.
Okay, so first we'll start with the porte cochere. So with these renderings without the columns, it kind of reads more of a canopy without the use of supports or columns. And so therefore we kind of applied the canopy design guidelines within new commercial buildings. And so they do recommend that canopies be sized and placed in locations that respect the design of the building. Canopies should be proportional with and complementary to nearby buildings and other canopies. One should design the new canopies simply to match historic equivalents and paint them muted colors that are complementary to the building and surrounding historic district. Additionally, you should keep a minimum of 8 feet between the lowest point of the canopy and the sidewalk or ground below per the building code. So as it was mentioned, the option 1, it kind of combined the elements of the previous 2 options. The option that came before in the February DRC meeting just had like the cables, and then the option 2 had the brackets up underneath. So you get the best of both worlds on option 1, but option 2 is a more streamlined, simple option. So going to the stair enclosure and the cube. So with the stair enclosure, it is proposing 2 different options, with the channel glass and one without. Channel glass is not an element that is seen within the historic districts in Franklin. The design guidelines recommend designing new windows to be compatible with the size, placement, rhythm, and relationship of solids to voids of those on nearby historic buildings. And more information is needed to determine if this element is meeting this guideline for the measurements that are on the historic buildings. That goes for all of these portions as well.
Were you saying that that's not supported by the guidelines?
We just needed more information.
Okay, got it.
That's proportions of these windows.
Right. And then the channel glass just is not seen.
Got it.
For, let's see, I wanted to skip to this north facade. To additionally, to further break up this elevation, it might be best to utilize an inset or an offset just to break this up just a little bit more, especially with the utilization of the metal and the brick, just so that it has like a clean line. But flopping back just a little bit to Building 9. So the elements of this Building 9 will be incorporated into the newly altered structure. A combination of elements such as brick, metal, concrete, and wood panels are currently seen on the building and will be incorporated into the design. The design guidelines recommend using decorative elements in a manner that is compatible to those on nearby historic buildings while avoiding direct replication, and avoid using decorative details that overpower or negatively impact the historic buildings, and design all facades to be compatible with the surrounding historic buildings. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the porte-cochere, and we'll take volunteers. So I'm not presuming everybody wants to or has to talk about every single piece of this, but feel free to talk about as much as you want. So does anybody want to start with comments on a porte-cochere?
I will.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
I like option 1 because it's got the trusses and the cables, and it kind of gives a railroad vibe. Of course, you've got that, you had a spur of the railroad in there, so I like that.
Okay. Anybody else? Brian, anything on that?
Yeah, I agree with what Bob said on that. I think that's a good combination.
Yep.
Sorry, I liked option 1 too. I was just wondering if there's a way to make it come over across the building a little bit further so it's not just stuck on the corner.
Carry along the front.
Yeah, to me it looks like it's like not quite balanced to have it just stuck right there. That's my only comment. I like option 1 though. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I like option 1. I wouldn't mind if it went across a little further too. I know you've got to kind of hit somewhere structurally that hits a pilaster. So I don't know which one that is, but I don't think it should necessarily cover the whole building, but maybe a bay more, who knows? But I like that comment. How about this stair enclosure? I guess is the way I understand it. It is enclosed. Both versions have cross ties. It's just, what is the enclosure mechanism? What is the glass is what we're really talking about. So any thoughts on that, Brian?
No, but help me understand what is the meaning of channeled glass?
So they did provide this image. So there's division in between the glass. They have an inspiration image in this bottom left-hand corner. So it kind of gives the illusion of like vertical.
So it's the vertical members in that. Okay, so not the one at the top, the example at the top, but the one below.
Right. That looks similar to what is illustrated in this elevation.
It's really a question of level of contemporariness, right? Is the question. Channel glass doesn't have mullions; it's self-supporting. Versus traditional storefront, which has the integral mullions and glass that's held up in this kind of a structure. In a little more traditional storefront, contemporary will be channel glass. Not to say we are in love with it, but that'll help us kind of feel out how progressive we can get with this element. Because it sounded like that was something that was of interest.
What are you proposing to look more like what we see in the top image or the bottom image?
I like them both. I'd probably err on the side of pricing.
From these two images, I would err on the top image, not the channeled glass image.
Yeah.
I agree.
Anything?
I think the channel glass kind of gives a 60s Florida motel vibe.
I wrote down coastal.
Coastal,
It's the only
right.
place I've ever seen it.
That's a good one.
That glass block, right?
I've seen it in New York a little bit. Go ahead, Holly.
Well, I actually really like the channeled glass. I think that I like the mid-century idea, especially because the factory was used at that time. And so it's possible that in the future that this will be historic, you know, even the new part. So I like the idea of adding an interesting element to make it still historic, but a little bit of a twist. So that's my apparently unpopular opinion.
I think what's cool about it is it is a structural element in itself. It holds itself up, so it's cool in that regard. But it always, every time I've ever seen it, even the images sort of show it this way, it always looks a little bit frosted-ish, even though it's not. And so I've seen it on some airports and things like that because you don't have to have frame. It'll span and hold itself up. So I think, I'm not sure the upper image there that's on the screen is exactly what we need, because I think they've got some spandrel panels and they're responding to some floor levels and things. But, you know, I'd go back to some of these proportions that are on the original windows, and not that it needs to be gridded out like that, but there's a certain X to Y proportion. So it'd be like a jumbo version of that is maybe the aluminum storefront grid. And, you know, if it weren't price prohibitive, I'd love to see the people who made your doors make a system. And even so aluminum storefront has its modern look and feel too, right? But if it were, I've even seen people do it out of hollow metal frame, which is what they do, you know, school door frames out of. But you can do windows out of that too, and it has kind of this stopped-in glass look instead of where aluminum storefront really wraps the glass.
Yeah.
It really looks like it's stopped into a frame. So maybe that's an option, and I don't know, you know, just based on what experience I've had with one or the other, I think they're comparable in price. If you went to a full steel system like is in the original building, that's probably the most expensive version. But I think going back to even discussions about like the parking garage being industrial looking, that hollow metal frame might be an option that looks industrial, like a steel frame, because it would be, but it just have stopped pieces of glass.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We did have some success with, you guys have reviewed aluminum storefronts that were matching existing. Building 2
Right.
was an example, and I think you're talking about shadow bars maybe, the mullions. But,
Yeah, just I think the whole system just looks a little different, you know. And when you get to this size, it's gonna have to be a big aluminum frame, and even the finish on it has a certain sheen. That's like the anodized sheen to it. It just looks a little more contemporary. Whereas like a hollow metal frame or even steel, they're both steel. You get to pick the paint color, and it has the sheen of whatever paint you put on it, you know. So it just feels a little different than aluminum storefront. And I don't mind the aluminum storefront. I just think it maybe is more contemporary than this big box maybe wants to be, if it really feels like that, you know, the conveyor canopy that's I don't know what building that is next to the carousel, the big, it has these bones, and so if it feels like it has those bones but it's been glassed in out of utility and necessity, and not necessarily going for the shiniest, most modern aesthetic, but it was just, hey, we had to enclose this thing because, you know, it became a paint booth that turned into a stair or whatever it was, the story. You know, then part of me is like, well, this is the new building, and if it's a little more contemporary and is aluminum storefront, doesn't break my heart.
We won't do the aluminum storefront that doesn't look like it belongs there.
Yeah, it's like, so that, but that, that upper picture sort of looks like, that's not really aluminum storefront, it's like a curtain wall
Yeah, it's
system.
a curtain wall. Yeah, I think we can, I think I understand what you're talking about, and I think we're seeing eye to eye on the,
Yeah, a nice curtain wall system like that with reveals and all that would be,
right.
knock
Well,
yourself out.
Sure, yeah.
That'd be beautiful. But yeah, the channel glass is cool, but I'm not sure I feel like it's appropriate here. Okay, so we've talked about portico share, stair enclosure, cube number 1. Let's go to the cube here, if everybody's ready to go to the cube. Okay. Any comments on this? Anybody? Go ahead.
I think it's a great solution to the cube problem, so love it.
Yeah, same here.
Sticking with that? Yeah, I like what you've done. I think it mimics that stair a little bit. I like the materiality. The forehead seems to be shrunk a little, whether that's actual or perceived. I like that. The other side of the cube, on the courtyard side, kind of has this cantilever out, and I'm flipping back and forth between the two. The parking lot side, what I really like about it is there are places all over the factory where the building was furred out and cladded with something new. Like, oh, we added on a mezzanine and we slapped on something that overhangs the floor below it, like almost a material width. It sort of looks like that here on the other side, the parking lot side. So I like that. On this courtyard side, it overhangs a little bit more, but I think it can stand to be a little more contemporary towards that interior. So I like the whole ensemble there. I'm going to jump to the north facade because I think it relates to what we're discussing with this cube. I agree with staff that there's got to be relief either forward or back into the building or outward. And I would encourage an outward kind of push out just a little bit because it's going to help you resolve your eaves into the side too. And I like the idea of the metal returning back to an inside corner. I think the hardest, most complicated thing to do would be to try and transition materials in the same plane. It's just never going to look good. There's no good solution to that ever. So one relief one way or the other I think would be helpful there, and I think it again starts to look like some additive piece, like these were two separate buildings that were brother and sister buildings and they needed to be enclosed out of utility. There's that box, but it needs some relief there just so the facade's not as long and the details are better. Any thoughts on that back facade, anybody?
Yeah, I think that's a good solution. I do like on the west facade how the cube is lessened the heavy forehead with that inset. I think that really made a big difference.
What's in that inset material wise?
Oh, are you asking like what the uses are in there?
No, just if you've got metal panel, is it metal panel and the stepped back forehead?
Back forehead.
Yeah.
Undetermined. We haven't.
Is
we
it
haven't
wood?
gotten-
Is it
I'm sure it'll
some
still
other
be in
metal?
It'll
Yeah.
probably still be
Okay.
metal. It's just
I'm just
different.
curious. It's kind of finished like it's
Right.
air. It's like stucco. It
right.
could be anything.
Or like a flat metal
It might
panel.
be a flat metal panel, so, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else on these boxes? No. Building 10. This is the explosion-proof building that's been encapsulated partially now, and it'll sort of, to me, it looks like it's the same amount of encapsulated as it is now, except it's accessible from this tunnel. Any thoughts? Anybody? No. I think it's pretty cool use. I could imagine people experiencing it because even when I go to the factory now, I park back here often, and there's a thoroughfare, and to have this kind of curiosity that's built into the side of the building, but has a story and still has that existing kind of, whether it's a real historic serving opening or not, I'm not sure we know, but there's an existing opening. I think it's cool. So it's a nod to sort of, it's been encapsulated for, what, a decade or two?
5 to 7 years, I can't remember
Is that when that addition was built?
Yeah, it's not that long.
Yeah, so curious thing, but I think it's a nice use of it. Building 9, which is this pool cabana party building. What do y'all think of this? Brian?
Well, having been on site, I think it's a good use of a building that was unusual. I kind of like your reflecting where the columns were broken with, they had sitting on these concrete.
Right, right.
Holly?
I think it's really interesting, really good. I like it.
I like it too.
Yeah, I think there was some consternation about losing parts of that building, but the fact is it's been meddled with highly and not in really good shape. So to use it and have this kind of essence and skeleton of what was there and then be able to keep that front facade, I think is cool. And then just the using it for this purpose, I think is really neat too, to have this kind of courtyard. The west side of the building, which is a solid wall now. I was trying to make sure I understood. You've kind of got this, it looks like it's going to have this shadow box, a little bit of transparency, or is it going to be a solid wall, or you don't know yet?
Well, the idea is that right there, it's showing a little bit more transparent than it probably will be. The idea is there is activity happening in that pool courtyard, and you want to be able to walk by and know that something is happening. So you get some sound of kids playing in the water, or you hear people talking, but you can't. It's not a privacy issue. So it's some degree of transparency, and it's got a material that will be reflective of the board and batten that's currently there now. But it'll just have more maybe spacing in a certain way that lets you have some sensory experience through it.
Yeah, and that those details will be interesting. Kind of what's transparent? Does it have windows or is it gaps? What's the detail like? Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, and the posts and the scissor trusses you have around the pool, I mean, that kind of reminds you of the canopy. So it just kind of draws those two elements together.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. So we've got portico, stair, cube, building 10, building 9, north facade, which has a rear cube. Any thoughts on the kind of rhythm of openings on the back? That rear facade?
Is that on the north?
Yes.
Now, it gives you a sense of the factory. And I think it looks good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it too. You think? Nothing? All right. Sounds like we're ready to move to parking garage.
Yeah, not much of a lead in on this one, but a few things to discuss. One of the most distinct changes, feedback was to try to make it look a little bit more like a building that might be on site. So what we drew heavy inspiration from building 2, which is in this image is the building far to the right. And that actually helps with we like that a lot. It helps with some other details. I think we can manage joints a little bit easier, particularly with how the facade works with the brick. We can get into that a little bit. I did want to talk about the metal on the Franklin Road facade. We've got some images here where we show a couple of options here. One on the top, you have kind of that kind of that parapet height that we proposed earlier with the brick showing, and then below is just the all metal. So some of the feedback was, what if we tried to mask that a little bit more and blend it with the roof, in front of it? That's the lower image. Our preference, there are some zoning things that we need to get into with material quantity if we were to go with the lower option. But our thought, and if you go into some of these images, now this is, it's tough to see from a distance, but this is where we've actually superimposed the images into existing images of the site. And our opinion is the heavy metal option just stands out, whereas the one where you have the brick is shown with the parapet, just looks like a building's there, like any other building on site. And so it just doesn't stand out. And we can also talk about parapet heights. We have an exhibit in the back. And this is in relation to the heights overall. And then obviously we've got the breakdown here by cars, so we can talk about that. And then we can talk about materials a bit too. No surprise on the metal. This has been seen everywhere with this commission. We did want to talk about brick. These are all thin set brick where it's cast into the precast. A lot that you can do with it. It looks pretty clean. Sorry. Actually done employees. So, yeah. Anyway, we'd like to talk a little bit about that material too. So.
Perfect. Emily, give us your thoughts, please.
Okay, so let me go to this rendering. So the rendering that was provided from the corner of Franklin Road and Liberty Pike show how the new structure would read from the intersection. The option with the use of brick and metal panels is successful, as several buildings on the site utilize the light gray screening at the top of the buildings. Then I wanted to move to the thin set brick panels that are shown in this photo, and the seams of the panel are highly visible. However, in this same photo, there is an example of the McEwen North Side. They have a metal feature inside of the window opening, and this was discussed at the last DRC meeting that this could be a successful addition to the structure. If we match the window mutton pattern what is existing on the factory, that it could blend better with the surrounding historic buildings on the site. With the metal material, it is helpful to see this image, but staff would request a material sample to view the quality of the material. Additionally, this rendering of the parapet height with the different cars is very useful and helpful to understand. As it is shown, the parapet would screen the low-profile economy cars or sedans from the road, while a pickup truck would extend over 2 feet in height over the parapet. At the end of the parapet that is shown, it would be 41 feet 10 inches with the design guidelines recommendation with the 10% recommended height. It is 42 feet 11 inches. So maybe potentially the parapet could be extended, just something we can discuss if the commission might be open to extending it just a little bit. I mean, as it is right now, it is up underneath what the guidelines recommend for height. So the guidelines do recommend utilization of brick or masonry materials that are compatible in size, profile, and detailing with historic materials. Alternative materials may be considered for use on a case-by-case basis. Considerations include the potential impact on the historic significance, durability, accuracy of appearance, location, environmental impacts, and interaction with the historic building materials. One should design roofs to be flat and utilize parapets to be similar to surrounding historic commercial buildings. Use decorative details in a manner that is compatible to those on nearby historic buildings while avoiding direct replication. And design new windows to be compatible with the size, placement, rhythm, and relationship of solids to voids on those on nearby historic buildings. As proposed, the materials are appropriate, but the thin set brick is not common in the historic overlay. Additional measurements of the proposed openings of the garage windows are needed to compare with the window openings on the surrounding buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
One follow-up comment, if I may.
Go ahead. Sure.
And this is about the cars and the parapet. It is a question about perspective and the angle. So if you look at some of these images, so I'll start at this page. You can see that cars are modeled on that in that image. That is the same modeling that is shown in these perspectives from the ground view. And so this is with that, 48-inch, 4'6" parapet. So.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Who wants to kick us off here?
Well, I'm going to kick off on the brick and metal parapet that are showing. I do agree. I agree with the applicant that having the little brick and a little bit of the metal showing seems to kind of hide that a little bit more. And my main concern was that a large brick facade was not competing with the brick forward building that's original on Franklin Road. So having the break in the material keeps the brick lower in comparison to that one, then you get the metal above it. So that meets that part. And my other huge concern was being able to anyone to see any parts of an automobile on the top of a building from Franklin Road. I mean, that's always been my main concern, is the view shed of Franklin Road. So from that, I would have to say that I would be more in favor of agreeing with staff to increase the height of that parapet. I don't know on these angles, we're not actually standing out and seeing, or someone else being somewhere in an elevated position. I mean, I don't know. But I mean, I could support a parapet up to the max of what's allowed for that area. And I would say on the thin set, I mean, I can't vote in a way that says yes for material that's not common in the historic district, like a thin set material. But I do agree with staff that, and I think Holly brought it out this last time, of making a faux window look or something that you could see in some of the openings for the garage. I mean, that might add, help take away from that being such a new structure that has, anyway, it may complement the other buildings at the factory too. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly.
I think it looks a lot better, so thank you for what you did to make the windows a little bit bigger. And I think if there could be some sort of window, at least metal or glass, kind of like some factory windows, I think that would look good if possible. I think the top version, the one that has the smaller amount of metal, that you guys like better. I like that, and it would be fine if the height were increased. That would be fine. I think it looks good as is, too. So I think the metal on the top helps, like Brian was saying, to make it look a lot less massive and, such an obvious addition. So, yeah, I think this looks really good.
So you're talking about the parapet on Franklin Road, and so the brick visible with the metal above.
Yeah, the first option. Yeah, I like both, but I do like the brick showing and then the metal. And then some people had raised concerns about cars showing, and it sounds like you could increase the metal if possible, or the height. And so it doesn't matter to me either way. If you wanted to, because people thought cars would show, that would be fine. But I think option one looks really good as is.
I agree with what both of them said. As far as like the brick veneer, I mean, I've not looked at a lot of brick veneers. Are there brick veneers that look truly like regular brick buildings?
So there's brick veneer has historically kind of a bad rap because of the way that they applied it and built it. It's like a lick and stick, and it's very kind of perfect, and it doesn't hit corners really well because it's thin. What they're doing here is, I think, pretty impressive. If you go there, you really have a hard time knowing that it's that is thin brick. It's not lick and stick. This is cast into the panels, and they can turn the corners with it like a real brick. And so you have to really find, with a keen eye, how to determine. I didn't know took me probably an hour, and then I had to confirm that that's what this was with the manufacturer because it's really impressive. As far as control joints, every brick wall is going to have control joint and expansion joints, and especially in the parking garage. So I don't think that that's a big, unique item here. I think a field trip would be worth it. I think that is impressive.
We also think we can hide these joints. This is showing some joints for conversation, obviously, and they appear in these garages. But with the new design, we think we can get creative. We've got some break points that we're going to work to minimize that.
Okay. And as far as windows in the garage, I found just in my life seeing different buildings and being in different garages that have windows, a lot of those started their life as another use, and then someone decided that they needed the garage worse than they needed offices. So I'm kind of either or on the glass.
Yes.
For our current planning review, they did recommend that the in between the panels, so those seams, they should not be visible. So they would need to blend in and not be visible. It just would need to look like our normal brick, that it wouldn't be discernible that it is like a thin set.
Okay. Yeah, and I think what you said is true, that you have a facade this long, there's going to be joints in it. Like the structural engineers will make you do that. They may not have done it 100 years ago, but no engineer will stamp this without expansion joints. So I think you've got these kind of concrete bands on here, which are reminiscent of, was it Building 2?
Right.
I think those are good places to maybe hide inside corners and things, better than some of the images that you sent. But is there a reason that like a full bed depth brick is just prohibitive? Is it just cost thing?
It's building
labor.
It's I mean, it's intense, right?
Yeah.
And it's so much more efficient to cast it in the precast. I mean, it's clearly more inexpensive. It's easier to do. The practicality of the site and how complicated it's going to be, and how trying to minimize downtime of construction is highly disruptive for all of those reasons.
Yeah.
And we feel like that nothing's going to be lost in the aesthetic that the public will be able to tell. And possibly anybody in this room, for that matter, if they didn't know about it. But
Yeah. It might be
that
worth
look-
seeing.
Sorry, achieving that concrete banded and inset brick look with traditional brick will also be very challenging, just because they're not building it the way that Building 2 was built, right? Those are structural, the way that they built it before. And so you had that opening to put the brick in to fill a gap, and that's just not how this will be built.
Sure. Well, I agree. I think that some window, I don't know that it needs glass in it, but seen lots of parking garages that were something else, like Bob and Holly have said, that the glass was taken out, but there's still all the frame and muntins and all that. I'm not sure it's got to be everywhere, but down the alley side makes a lot of sense in my mind. And I'm not even sure it's got to be every floor. I don't know until I kind of see it. So it might be easy to just do this rendering that I'm looking at, one of these renderings. that just shows some options, that maybe has the grid pattern that's fairly typical, that kind of smaller mull. It has a chance of getting busy too. So when you see it, we may go, oh, that's just drawing attention to itself. Don't know. I like like everyone has said, that kind of limited metal panel. I think it meets zoning too, so they'll like it better. I wouldn't mind if the parapet's a little bit higher. I'm looking at the renderings, and you said the cars are in the renderings.
They are.
And you can
Yeah.
just barely, like, it just looks like a blip from Franklin Road.
Well, I mean, yeah, from the alley, obviously you're closer, and even this perspective is in Harpeth Industrial. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty.
So zooming in on that top left, and Emily may have to zoom
know
it
if I
for
can
you.
zoom in on- or
But you can kind of see just the little blip of a car
Yeah,
roof. But
you know, the question is how high is really what it gets to, and perhaps we can do a little bit better study on this now, you know, kind of from an angle and what you could potentially see. We might have to do some type of section with a, you know, at an angle.
But that, if it's maxed out to the 42 foot 11, then, you know, obviously we can't control what cars people drive, but there's a height limitation to get in the garage, because I saw your sections, the second and third story are not super tall.
Aren't we just talking about the parapet? We're just talking about making the parapet taller.
That's right.
Not the entire garage.
That's right, yeah.
And, you know, and I say, let's err on the side of caution. You know, let's make sure you can't see, you know, a full-size truck and its top, or the headlights, you know, that you see from that. Let's err on that side of caution.
Yeah.
Well, we'd be talking about 13 inches, it looks like, you know, 12 or 13 inches to get to that max on that parapet. It's
On just that side.
on just that.
Because the whole garage is shorter on the other end, because it's the opposite end of a ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That.
No reason to make it 42 foot 11.
I don't think it matters on the other elevations. I think you're, you know, as Mr. Lasser is saying, is Franklin Road is
Yeah.
the important elevation. You're going to get more depth from it than any other elevation, and that's also the highest FFE, you know, where a car is going to be parked.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your thin set and the image that you're showing. So are you saying that if we were to see the thin set brick from the, I'm trying to see what page I'm looking at. But I think it shows it from the,
7.
kind of the Harpeth Industrial Court.
We're on 3 of 10.
Oh.
So I'm seeing these concrete bands. Are you saying that the thin set brick could sit completely within the concrete bands, and you would see no expansion joints of the caulk, the big heavy caulk that you actually see with these cast systems?
Saying the brick can sit within it to be flush with the concrete band like it is in building 2. Now,
Would we see expansion joints like we see in the grid patterns that you see in expansion joints?
you'll still have control joint. Whether you're going to have control joints in anything, right? When you have where the concrete comes together on this garage, you're going to have control joints on regular brick as well, right? Not expansion joints. I think control joints and expansion joints are different things, right? Control joints they're 5/8. They're like a regular mortar thickness, right? Expansion joints can be 2, 3, 6 inches. It can be huge. And so what we're talking about is minimizing those as best we can.
But you're saying they're still there.
They're
I mean,
still there.
I mean, you, even if you color them the same color as the brick, I mean, you can still pick out this grid pattern in it. And I'm concerned of setting a precedent in the historic district of adding a material that I don't know if we've ever approved a material like this in the historic district. So, I mean, there's several concerns on many levels.
Well, you're going to have to have control joints regardless, but
Well, these are
why
expansion joints, not control joints. We're
sorry.
talking about large.
Expansion, you're going to have those anyway. But what we like about this option is you've got potential areas along those concrete lines to do that in a way that looks like a reveal.
But won't you have horizontal lines, vertical lines too?
Yeah, I mean, you could. I don't know. I mean, I'm
Kelly,
sure
did
you
you
can,
have,
but we can-
Kelly's got something she needs to.
Just that the zoning ordinance kind of provides a backstop to this. It limits the materials to brick or stone as the primary materials for parking garages in the Central Franklin overlay district. So it would have to look exactly like brick with no seams, no caulking. It's got to look exactly, it's got to be brick, or no one can tell it's not brick. It needs to look and feel like brick, same joint sizes, same mortar depths, all of those things.
To be clear, it is brick. It would be brick, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I think,
it's the
so,
way it's
so
cast.
even going back to like the hotel, those big brick walls, they're all going to have the same expansion, or all those, they're going to be all over. And a general rule of thumb is like 12 feet of height before you have to put an angle iron and a joint, and 20 feet of width, I think, is what engineers tell us, just general rule of thumb. So if every building out here, or any new building, even in any historic district, has to, by code, have to have joints now. So I think our concern is, do those joints look like if it were regular brick joints? And that's what I think we want to see. And you look at those pictures you sent, let me get to them here. You know, they've got one going through this limestone detail. Again, that would be, even if that was real full bed depth brick, you're going to have some of those. That one's a little peculiar because between the window and the end of the pilaster is something they should have been able to brick in one piece with real brick. So it's those kind of things.
Yeah, and some of those are not, I think that we can, with the concrete bands that we're proposing, I think we've got more options to hide them than in some
Right.
of these examples.
So I look at McEwen North Side, the bottom left hand, that's got a joint at the corner. That's because that's where two panels come together, and you'll have to have some of those. Those are the places where you see a difference, because in a full bed depth brick, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
That particular one
And we don't
wouldn't.
have those circumstances here, which is the beneficial thing, since we're,
You'll see it right there at that corner that's on the screen.
nope, because that corner's going to look like concrete. That's going to be the concrete band. So the brick would be infill of that.
Behind that would be the joint at the concrete band.
Yeah, so you're going to just imagine that corner of that building being a 1 foot square column, concrete column, right?
Yeah.
It's going to look like that. And then
Yeah.
the brick's going to sit inside it, so we don't have corners.
Yeah, I think the apprehension that I have about it is it's, you know, we could say this all we want, but until there's like shop drawings and you see exactly where the joints are going to be, and we can all see like this is the exact place and exactly how it's going to look. It's the unknown is uncomfortable, I think.
Right.
So
And the good thing is, I mean, the McEwen examples really are good for, it's a different style, and it's complex, and they're going for ornate, stuff here, which we're simplifying it. We're trying to look, we're going to be different. As long as the quality here, in terms of, turning corners, and the fact that they can do some of this stuff is really impressive to me. And we can get to that detail as long as you guys get comfortable with this quality, and then we can start to kind of work in that direction. But we have to kind of be on that same page before we really go too far with it.
well, I think what you're hearing is everybody's comfortable with real brick, and the burden of proof is on you all to prove to us that this is equal.
I wonder if we could.
Hang on, let Emily say.
So per the zoning ordinance, you can have 25% of an accent material per facade. So it can be 25% in total of metal or
Right, whatever your accent materials are.
right. So it can be a mix of metal and concrete, just it cannot go over the 25% per the requirements in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Does that include caulk? Can we go to? proceed. What if we, on this elevation, for example, we can look into this a little bit more and see if we can size those panels and try to find where we might have a grid. Would that be, a little bit more helpful to how we might hide some expansion joints?
I know you're really trying. You're trying to convince the board of this point, but it's the precedent. The zoning ordinance says use real brick. I know you say these panels are cast brick, but it's not traditional. This is not a traditional approach. And, I have to be clear. I can't support a thin set product on this garage. And I want to be clear. I don't want to be ambiguous here. And I kind of feel like maybe I have been because the conversation continues. But
Okay. Yeah, I think what's confusing for me is not what you're saying, it's that this is brick. It's a means and methods of how it's constructed. And so we're trying to break down, we do want to go with this method because it's exceedingly better for constructability for everything. And we're trying to find out what is it about it other than just the way it's constructed. And if there are ways that we could, if there are issues in particular, we can address them. I'm confident of that, so that it's not, and I think that the main point is the aesthetic and what does it look like and how does it tie in with the rest of the site. And so we're trying to, and I think we can accomplish all of that by a better method of constructing it. And that's what we're trying to get through. And if there's a particular issue that really does, and it sounds like it's the expansion joints, but maybe it's more than that, but that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, like I said, I think the sure thing, if you wanted to move forward and know that we'd be happy with something, it would be full bed depth brick, and it still is going to have joints and angle irons and things, but it'd be traditionally constructed. And then you have a lot more control with the masons as opposed to something that shows up and, is fitted together. And of course, you do have control of this with the suppliers and all that, but the sure bet is real brick. And I think there's been other commissioners who maybe aren't here tonight who've expressed some concern with the thin brick too. And it is, just because you all may take great care and pull it off well, we still have to answer for it kind of as a community board. When somebody else wants to do it, maybe they don't have the experience or, to pull it off and pay attention to all these joints like you all might. So like Brian's saying, we have to be careful about introducing a material that is not seen. And I know it's still brick, but it's a different method of using brick than is found in our design guidelines. And the guidelines are pretty specific that we're supposed to use materials and have a finished product that is compatible with everything around. And I heard what you're saying, like you feel like you can do that, but you still may not convince everybody that the control is there to be able to pull it off so that nobody could tell the difference. I can definitely tell a difference walking around. I can tell you every parking garage on the planet that's been thin veneered. There's evidence, right? We're looking at a whole bunch of pictures that you provided. So the sure bet is to use the real bed depth brick. Trying to think if there's anything else on here. We talked about the height. I don't know what I did. There it goes. Yeah. I like the little concrete bands. I think it makes it look warehousey. And like it was built out of concrete and infilled. To staff's comment, may not meet the 25% thing, but you've got flexibility on that backside in the alley with how high the brick goes and the metal panel starts and stops. You've got a little flexibility there, so. All right. I guess without rehashing that one, any other specific other elements that we need to talk about?
I don't think so.
Nope.
No.
You guys good? All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it. Staff announcements. Ding, ding.
Just 3 quick ones. We have the Preservation Plan Community Meeting, and it will be held on Wednesday, March 26th, from 6 to 8 p.m. here at Eastern Flank Event Facility. And then we'll have a special DRC that on Thursday, the 27th, from 4 to 5 p.m. to meet for a focus group discussion with the Lakota group for the preservation update. And then our annual Historic Zoning Commissioner training is scheduled for Monday, March 31st from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Lunch and breakfast will be provided. Thank you.
All right. If that's it, we are adjourned. Thank you all.